I'm on mute. There we go. Welcome back, everybody, to the Scaled Success Reptile Podcast. Thanks for joining us tonight. I know a lot of people are excited for this one. Been talking to Jeff for a while to set this one up, and we felt like, after Daytona was a perfect time. So, quick Daytona recap for myself. We've ended our first year. It wasn't the perfect outcome, but the first year there, I can't complain. I sold some hognose, met some good, cool people. Finally met some online, friends in person. Put faces to reptile names. So it was really cool. U.S. Arc auction was really, really good. They raised, I forgot exactly how much. I'll have to look at that post while we're talking here. And, it was a good weekend. So, good to see everybody there. If you guys stop by our table, thank you so much. If you bought a hognose from us, thank you a lot. It means a lot to us. And, wanted to say, if you are looking for the next one, they released the dates already. So start planning your hotel, start booking your flights so you guys can come down, because it is the hognose show to be at, because the concentration of how many hognose breeders are there, it's amazing, and you'll see some really cool stuff and pick up some really cool animals. Now, Daytona is done. Next weekend, what is it, September 9th, 10th, and 11th. Oh, sorry, wrong calendar. September 6th, 7th, and 8th, we have NARBC Dallas at the Dallas Market Hall. And we're going to be vending as well. So if you guys are in the Dallas area or going out there, make sure to stop by, and see us there. I'll show you guys. I'll post a location in the map of where we're going to be at in our social media. And, looking to meet more people there. This is one of the best things about the shows, is just talking to people, meeting people in person, and getting to talk hognose, really, or any other reptiles. So that's really it, what we got going on. Our morph market is being updated every few days of what we have available for the 2024 season. But our Husbandry Pro store is fully updated. So if you guys want to go see exactly what we have for this season and a handful of stuff left over from last season, go check our Husbandry Pro store. It's in the description below. The link's in the description below. So go check that out. And other than that, let's say hi to a couple people that are here already. I know, like I said, people are excited, and give a shout out to everybody that's supporting us today. JNX Exotics, James Perry, thanks for joining in tonight. Anthony, as usual, big supporter. TNA Snakes, thanks for joining. Joey D, Meteoric Serpents, make sure to go check out Colubric Corruption on the Meteoric Serpents YouTube channel. He does it every Sunday, if I'm not wrong, 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. He has a whole bunch of colubrid breeders on there, specifically talking colubrids. So, Hognose is on there. I've been on there. Our guest, Jeff Galewood Jr. has been there on there as well, with his dad. So it's a really cool podcast. Go check that as well. Ricardi 151. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. Snaky Links, thank you for joining us tonight. Hip Hogs, how's it going? Thanks for joining. Quirky Colubric Creations, thanks for joining, Justin. Jesse, what's going on? Central LA Reptiles, thanks for joining us tonight. Harrison Hognose. All the Hognose people are on tonight. Angry Hogs all the way from Spain joining us. I know it's a late night for him if he's tuning in, but gotta make time for this podcast. John Gill, thanks for joining in. Jermaine, Shovel Nose Hogs, thanks for joining in, bud. Good seeing you at Daytona. Another great YouTube channel for Hognose. He has some great morph videos showing you description of morphs and combos, so go check that out as well. Julianne Cassidy, sorry about that. Thanks for joining. Bohemian Exotics Carissa, thanks for joining. Barely Hog Parents, thanks for joining in tonight. Paragon Reptiles, thanks for joining. And we're gonna close it out with Paragon Reptiles tonight. Actually, you know what? Another Florida hognose breeder, Nick Markham, TBM Reptiles. Thanks for joining us tonight. And you know what, man? There's so many good people joining us tonight. John Carroll finally quickly met him at Daytona. Shared some stickers with each other. He got some stickers from me, and I grabbed some from him as well. I think when John was at our table, I was away doing it, being an interviewee at a podcast. So he got to talk to my daughter that was handling the table at the time. So we're gonna end the intros with that. Thank you again if you guys are tuning in. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit the like, comment down below, drop some super chats if you guys have some specific questions for Jeff or myself and what we're gonna be talking about. Drop a super chat so you guys can get your question highlighted. And thanks for the support again. So without further ado, let's bring on Jeff Galewood.
Hey, Alvaro. Hey, everybody.
What's up, Jeff? What's up, man? Post Daytona show for us here. Finally met you. You're one of those people that, have been going back and forth on social media, conversations about reptiles and hognose, and finally got to meet you in person. So that was, really, really cool to do that. And a handful of other people, This is your first time back in Daytona after how many years?
7. It was easy to remember because last time I was there, I was 30. And from the time I was 15 to 30, I'd always gone to Daytona. And I vended the majority of the times I went. Very first year I went, though, I didn't vend. And so anyway, Daytona was actually like my kind of common ground for like an expo to go to. Now everybody thinks of it as an expo that I just don't attend because I haven't been there in a while. But I was like, no, this used to be like in my lineup with Tinley, like it's a must, like not miss. And then I suddenly started missing it often. And so I came back this year, and this year I didn't vend. So I was able to walk around. And even though I didn't vend, it really didn't seem like I had enough time. Part of that could be I woke up at like 1 p.m. on Sunday. So the show was mostly over by the time I got there Sunday when I got there around like 2 o'clock. Yeah. But Saturday I got to meet you and a bunch of other people. I think I met like pretty much everybody. And some
That's
people
cool.
I don't think I got formally introduced to, but it's really nice. A lot of people came up and introduced themselves, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I mentioned today to you after messaging you before this podcast this week is my wife usually goes to like these big shows with us, helps me vend and stuff like that. She had a last minute work trip. So it's myself and my 14-year-old daughter. So it was a lot for our first Daytona. It was a lot of people. I had pre-scheduled to be a guest on other podcasts during Daytona. So I know some people came to our table and I wasn't there. So if you were, at our table and I wasn't there, thanks for stopping by. My daughter told me and my little brother was also there. It's like, hey, people's coming to look for you and you're not here. I was like, sorry, I didn't expect, to be man solo in this show, but overall it was good. After 7 years not being at Daytona, did you notice any major differences in like the way they run the show, the amount of hognose breeders there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the last time I was there, it was like, things change in the reptile community fairly often. I'd say like every 5 years there's some pretty drastic changes. And I've been paying attention to that, for the majority of my life, I'd say. And this time, around, there's like, well, the one thing I definitely know, even in the last 2-3 years, even though I hadn't been there, it's changed a lot. Because in the last 3 years, there's probably double the amount of hognose breeders vending the show than there was, now. Mm-hmm. So, but, a lot of that is like, I think you were saying it, and a few other people did, like, there's a lot of reptile breeders that live in Florida, and there's a lot of hognose breeders that live in Florida. So it's a very accessible expo. And Daytona, that used to be the hot spot. That was the expo. That was the international biggest reptile expo and event. And then, now you have like contenders like Pomona and Tinley, and they kind of have their own like, qualities that make those expos nice to attend. But Daytona definitely has the most hognose vendors there. And so that actually draws in a lot, of course, hognose people. That's a good time to like schedule a trip if you're really a diehard hognose fan. You love hognose snakes and you want to meet a lot of hognose breeders, look at a bunch of cool hognose that are available. That's definitely an expo to fly out to. Because let's say you live in like Oklahoma, like the middle of nowhere. Well, I'm not dissing Oklahoma. Actually, Oklahoma's nice. You can find plains hognose snakes there. But anyway, if you're going to fly out to a show, it's like, well, you could fly out to Tinley, but there's not as many, hognose breeders there, or you could fly to Daytona where there's substantially more. But I mean, I'm at Tinley and I'm not at Daytona, so there is that. So if you want to see me, go to Tinley.
Yeah, and Tinley it's the the show to be at for breeders, especially ball pythons and stuff like that. But it's a little weird for us hognose breeder because of the permit stuff, right?
Yeah, the permits are really easy though, and the one thing is though it does limit. It definitely limits residents of Illinois from owning hognose because everybody has like 5 million things to do. Even though the permit's really easy to get, I turn down tons of people every show because it could be an undercover agent because they're trying to buy a hognose and they're like, well, I don't have my permit or it just expired and they're just sell me one. And I'm like, yeah, right. It's like probably a fish and wildlife. Get out of here. Not doing it, dude.
Yeah. I talked to I forget his name. The gentleman is I guess the head of the permitting.
Scott Baylor.
Yes, yeah. And he said, do not come up here without a permit. Do not sell anything without permit because most likely you will be caught.
They catch somebody for a while. It was Sunday. There was a Fish and Wildlife officer exiting the show with a bulletproof vest on for whatever reason. Maybe it was cold. Maybe the Kevlar helped. But he had a stack of hognose snakes that he got from somebody. So, but it's not just hognose snake; it's any native. Like bull snakes would be, on that list as well as plains garters.
For sure. And so with the show talk and stuff like that, what's it called? What do you look forward? Because we talked about it, and you're thinking about going back just to hang out again. Seems like you had a good time, right? So any different you want to see next year that you saw from this year, or waking up a little earlier Sunday?
Probably waking up earlier. Yeah. That's about it. The go-karting, I feel I'd be go-karting like all the time, but the exhaust from those things, the fumes especially when they made you sit there for like 5 minutes before you're allowed to go, and you're just like around all the other go-karts just running. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of like, I don't need to do this all day. I was like two different, races or whatever they were going to call them. Mm-hmm. You had multiple laps. You actually got to drive for quite a bit. But anyway, yeah. But about the reptiles, I'd imagine next year it's going to be pretty similar. A lot of the, similar breeders. I'm sure there's going to be new people there too. So that's, good though, because like in a whole other year, there's going to be those people to talk to and have new conversations with. So, but yeah, that's probably waking up earlier on Sunday, more time.
Yeah. And did you stay until Monday, or did you leave Sunday? Okay.
I left Monday midday. So Sunday it was pretty, lax. We didn't have to rush out or anything.
Yeah. What's it called? Was there a difference Monday morning after the show and stuff like that?
Yeah. You know what? There weren't many, people. It was like Sunday night when we hung around, like, because we went out to eat and then we came back. And then even like, it was like 4 hours after the show had closed, I had seen some people walking down the sidewalk. I didn't recognize them. They had US Ark like hats and apparel and stuff. So I was like, oh, there's reptile people are still hanging around and leaving. But by Monday morning, Monday morning, that's what we did. We went to the pool and I bought these like foam squirt guns, and then we went in the lazy river and did all kinds of stuff like that. So
that's cool.
I mean, basically the only thing I noticed was like the reptile show was over. That's it. And everybody was gone. So like, because I went herping for a bit Sunday night with John Rice too, and Eric from. I've known him for a long time. I don't know what his business is, but he sells all kinds of supplies, and you've probably seen him. He's everywhere.
Supplies? And, I'm trying to think, Eric.
Yeah, he's from Ohio.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think he's even on my phone. It's just like Eric, and that's it. So I don't know his last name. But we went herping, and then like, I even asked, I was like, is Mitch coming? He goes, no, he's already like on his way home. He's like already home. I was like, all right. It's like everybody has left for the most part.
So we have a super chat. Kat says, Jeff tells everyone to be nice to me, please.
What, am I supposed to say that to Cass?
I guess.
Oh, to Kat.
Kat.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, everybody be nice to Kat. Yeah, she's in a Discord though,
Yeah.
like nobody's like they're not purposely being mean, but if you are in there often, you see the dynamic. It's basically
it's like the family dynamic of the pitter back and forth and stuff like that.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a mild roasting and sarcasm, and then just inside jokes all day.
Yeah.
So
for sure. So we touched base on Daytona and stuff like that. Like I said, great to see you there. I think a lot of people were glad that you came out and hang out and stuff like that. Next year, hopefully, I have with my wife's there, and I can get to step away a little more and hang out a little more, especially Friday and Saturday night and stuff like that. But you mentioned the Discord, so you have your Discord going on for Hognose, and you have a pretty good amount of people who join there, and it's pretty active. So that's another thing, another source if people are looking for information on Hognose or just want to BS Hognose, right?
Yeah, the Discord's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Generally, I think because that's why it's so active. There's like talking all day. It's gotten that's the one thing too. I'm like, well, it's great because it's niche. It's not super big, but it is decent size. And yeah, that's my one concern though. I was like, if this keeps growing, I'm like, we're gonna have to make separate channels for. I don't know. Like, I don't want to because I've seen Discords where they have it for like newer people and then the more senior people, and then there's this kind of like segregation, and there's not as because there's just too many channels, and with there being I think it's 327 people exactly now, and I think only 40 or 50, 60 of them are fairly active. Some people are probably just reading the stuff. But yeah, it's because actually Jermaine jumped in it for a bit last few days. He goes, I had to turn the notifications off because it's crazy in there. I'm like, I wouldn't have notifications on for that friggin' thing. 100%. Definitely not.
Yeah. I have all my Discord channels, silenced. I even have my Instagram silenced. So that's what I would tell people, if you're trying to get a hold of me for something, either urgent, you need a response, text me or email me, because even my Instagram, even though I'm on there pretty active, I don't get notifications onto my phone. It's just too much sometimes. With the
email's going to get to you too. Now I'm to the point where email, I'm like, oh, you email me? I'm like, that's the worst way. And then I even my text doesn't get blown up, and they give me all these different things for politicians and to vote for this, and now I'm not even really checking my text much. And they're like, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Find me in person.
Yeah, for sure. And before we get to the genetics and stuff like that, any other show you're going to be here in the future?
Yeah.
You got Tinley coming up, right?
Oh, well, Tinley Park's in October, and that's massive. It's a must-go-to show if you the top 3 expos to see: Daytona, Pomona, or Anaheim. Pomona and Anaheim are interchangeable. They're about the same. Anaheim's actually pretty nice, and then Tinley. Tinley's definitely a must-go-to, but it's the one thing that's different with Daytona. Daytona has a lot more space, and it's not as crazy. Tinley, they don't want to change the venue, and I don't blame them. I would not change that venue, but they're trying to appease people and get as many people in there as possible. So it's packed to the gills. Even the one time my table was all jacked up, I didn't even get my one full table. I had to use it was weird. Anyway, so it's very crowded. But anyway, what were we going to talk about after that? I can't remember now.
We were just talking about shows that you're going to come up.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Then the Southeast show in Atlanta.
Okay. Yeah, so this year, that's October 12th and 13th is Tinley.
Then Bob Vooz is September 14th and 15th.
Gotcha.
So that's coming up. And that's in Atlanta, and that's his first show he's putting on. He's putting a lot of advertising into it. There's going to be a lot of big-name people there. Justin Kobeka is going to be there. Bob, of course, Chad Halker, and quite a few other people. And they've been promoting it really well. And the Atlanta area, I heard, is pretty good. And it actually is a pretty big metropolis, so it's going to have a big crowd. And I've had 3 people reach out to me that are never been to a show that I've vended at before. So I'm like, oh, I am kind of hitting a demographic or an area where I'm actually able to, bring in some people there. It's close enough in proximity that they can come out and check it out.
Yeah. So Snaky Links, I love this super chat. If you want to find any breeder, send a Morph Market deposit.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, Morph Market. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, because sometimes it's not awesome, but I do have people bullshitting me through Morph Market sometimes. They're like, "Hey Jeff, how's it going?" They're like, "I just wanted to reach out and talk to you and say hi and ask you a few questions." And I'm like, "Man, I was like, that's like more of like an Instagram kind of like comment, or like something you sent to me on Instagram, or like my text, or Morph Market." I was like, "Well, that's fine though, as I'm going to answer it. Here we go."
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's an interesting tactic, with like messaging an inquiry, on Morph Market, just to ask a separate question.
It is. They're going to get my attention.
Oh, for sure. I've gotten those within the last couple months, and it's like just very like basic hognose questions. I'll answer them, stuff like that, but I'm not gonna have a multiple day conversation on Morph Market.
No, yeah, you don't want to. I had that one time. This guy was concerned. He bought a hognose that originally came from me, but it was at this place, and it was kind of small for its age. And the guy needed a lot of reassurance, and it turned into like, man, I think it was like a total of 50 messages back and forth total.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot for a Morph Market.
It was. It was over a course of days. It was over a period of like maybe a week.
Yeah, I was looking at the Tinley dates and stuff like that, October 12th and 13th. I might have to shoot up there just to go hang out, because I've never been to Tinley. I don't have any shows going on there that weekend, so I might have to hit it up. And see
it's a good time, yeah. And then the weather isn't going to be too cold. It's actually usually pretty nice around that time, and it will be interesting for you to see your take and the way you think, like, or like your experience at Tinley versus like Daytona. Daytona though is a lot more laid back. And I know this is your first year vending Daytona, but how many years have you been going to that expo just to hang out and look around?
3 years.
Like how many previous years? 3 years.
3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's totally different from hanging out and vending. Man, the just the effort of sitting at your table and stuff like that. The just hang out where just like you said, get up whenever you want, go hang out. Saturday usually the full day. Sunday get up later, take the kids to the beach usually in the morning, then hit the show and stuff like that. So let me see. But yeah, man. So good to know what shows you're gonna go to. So people, if you want to talk to Jeff in person, and want to see some of his hognose. Are you taking? We're not gonna get there yet. I was about to jump. But so tonight, the title of the show is Let's Talk Genetics. With your first podcast we had you on, it was your background, how you got to where you're at now. But with the genetics thing, how many morphs have you discovered to this point? Like
new mutations?
Yep.
Well, it'd really just be Arctic if you're going to describe it as like an incomplete dominant and like recessive mutations. Lemon Ghost, Woma, those are like those are line traits. Then I have like my own red phase line trait that got incorporated into extreme red and purple line, and then that kind of became its own thing. That's kind of a conglomerate of all these reds. And then like morph combinations, like world's first and stuff. Definitely a decent amount of those. But as far as actual singular mutations that I've released right now, just Arctic. That's it. This new one I have is like, it can be described kind of like as a mutation based on its phenotypic appearance. But its inheritance is that of, it's polygenic. So it's actually a trait. It's a multitude of genes. But these polygenic traits aren't all equal, and that's probably what the topic of the discussion is gonna be, because we're talking about this new trait I'm releasing, and it's gonna be polygenics and how they differ. Because polygenics, a lot of people have a pretty good idea of it, and it's fairly easy, but it's actually complex easy. There's a lot of different types of polygenics, because it's just poly just meaning many, then genes, alleles, traits, and so you can have a poly that is influenced by just a few amount of alleles, and then have a bunch of smaller additive ones, and ones that kind of have like, other quirks. And, polygenics, when we're talking about it, is usually inferring to like, it's just wild type alleles. So these are just natural occurring existent, alleles that aren't really described as mutants. I mean, there can be like mutants that kind of get described as like eventually wild types, because wild type is just term for the most common alleles within a wild population of animals. So you could have like a dominant, let's say like a panther, it's all black. Let's say over like at first there's just a few black panthers as a dominant trait. And then over a course of like 100,000 years, that trait is very efficient for that species. And all of a sudden they're all black. Well, that was once a mutant gene, but now it's considered wild type because it became part of the natural population. And actually people, like, let's say if the whole population was solid black and then people discovered it all these years later, they wouldn't even think of it as a mutation. They wouldn't even look at it and look like I have blue eyes. That's a mutant. That's recessive. So, but there's polygenics like red phase, yellow phase, and green phase, and hognose. And some of these are just, variations of locales that can be exacerbated or basically, capitalizing and keep breeding it to, increase that phenotype and to make it look better. And then there's other type of polygenics and they're more rare, but they can have more abrupt and more dramatic impact. And I think a lot of the reason behind that is actually, what it is allele recombination. Because during meiosis, when you have, let's say, a pair of animals, every time there's new offspring, it's a recombination of alleles. And sometimes these recombinations can cross over, and you can get pretty drastic new recombinations, and that can affect phenotypes. And so that's like what happened with this new one I have, the Symphony. That's what I would suspect. That's the thing that makes the most coherent sense in how these polygenics can just kind of arise out of nowhere. And there's been a few other ones like that. And then I call them polymutants because they have mutant-like impact, but they still exhibit, it's still a poly, behavior. And, genetics is always evolving. And that's because the one thing is we mostly learn just about Mendelian genetics, and it's, fairly straightforward. You have dominant, incomplete dominant, and then recessive. And what Mendel, and that's what I always thought for a very long time, that alleles, and that's kind of what it's almost like taught to us, or I think people assume that alleles are inherited independently, but they're not inherited independently. They're usually breaking off in packets. And so there's a lot of alleles that are in close proximity on the chromosome. They're often getting inherited together. And that's where these forms of linkages have, come into play. But every now and then there could be crossing over, and you can get a completely different allele recombination. And that can give you things like this. And I also think the allele recombinations in captivity are going to have actually wilder outcomes versus wild populations. The wild populations aren't already being selectively bred. They have natural selection. We're doing artificial selection where we're selectively line breeding stuff for certain appearances. Even in ball pythons are doing it. They're picking out their best enchies, they're picking out their best pastels, and it's like they're doing, basically passive selectively line breeding, or line breeding with that they're not even paying attention to, but it is occurring. And then since we are working with a smaller population, we have this smaller population of genes. And that's often called, if you refer to genetics, it's called genetic drift. And anyway, but this is an artificial genetic drift. This is just, human interaction, like humans, of course, breeding these snakes.
Yeah.
And then we get these, go ahead.
With like the genetic combos and the polygenic stuff and I want to address this question real quick from Goff Reptiles, Casey. He asked, what kind of red lines are you working with? And for you, I'll answer that question. And then for you, where did your red lines originate from?
Okay.
So, my red lines, so I have extreme red purple lines from Jeff. And then I have some purple lines from what's it called? JMG Hognose, so Jamie Vaughn, which are two different red lines, but two very good red lines, I believe.
I think the one thing that's funny with lineages, and I've seen it in leopard geckos a lot, sometimes things will get rebranded or names will be put on lineages that really, I'll just say aren't really deserving of a new title. And I've actually seen the opposite too, where people are kind of a little humble and they do selectively line breeding for a long period of time, and they should put a label on it and they don't. That's more rare, but I have seen it. And I don't want to say who. I actually should talk to them, but I like, and I think they simplified. They'll just be like, this is this type of red, and it really isn't. And but they're just doing it because it's easier to to say it is that. And then here it's kind of like their own lineage. So my red lineages actually is funny because Brandon from Mellow Hogs was talking to me about it, and because it was posted on Facebook. I didn't know what the hell it was about, but Justin Mitchum had posted this like compliment. I guess I sent him. Well, I remember sending it. I remember it was like in March 2014, so it was a little over a decade ago, and it was a post, and that was basically just a post, my compliment. I'm like, why is that there? And so I had people messaging me about it because I didn't see his Facebook post. And so anyway, they're like, what's this about? I was like, I have no friggin' clue what the hell's going on. And then somebody said in the comments, they're like, he actually said that, yeah, Jeff has nice reds or something like that, but he doesn't have any red lines from me. Which I was surprised he said that, but it's a long time ago. And anyhow, and then later on, because I was showing Brandon then hey, I have certificates. I did buy some extreme reds from Justin. And it was 2007. I thought it was 2006, but it's 2007. I still have them. They're not in good condition. I wish I took better care of them. So anyway, I showed him those, and then then I guess Kevin Rhodes had made a video, and then Justin was talking about it, and that's how all this surfaced.
Gotcha,
and so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a lot of history there, and it's interesting because I knew of Don Shores and Brian Box. The Mike Pierce name I had never heard. I didn't know who that was. And anyway, my reds though, I have some extreme reds from Justin, but actually only one turned out to be a good breed. I bought a trio, and one is extremely defensive, and it was I ended up just selling it. And then the other one never turned out to be a good breeder. And then the other one, the extreme red albino male I got from, which was the best one in the group, actually bred very well. I later got purple lines. But now that's a little further actually in the future. That was because I bought those in 2007. I bought the purple lines a little beyond that. Purple lines, I said it before, it's they're extreme reds. It's not one I could say and take it to court and it would hold up. But that's what it is. And anyway, but then we'll go back in time. So when I wanted red-faced hognose when I was a kid, I was 12, 13, 14 years old. And there was that 2001 article of Reptiles magazine that had hognose was the main topic. And Richard Evans, probably most important person in, the hognose community for being responsible for kicking off the whole hognose market, the whole community. And he had some really nice red-faced hognose. And his, of course, derived from, locales, most likely in the Lubbock area from where he's at of, red-faced hognose that he was selectively line breeding. When I would try to buy those from him, he was always sold out. He had them at Daytona. So when I was 15, he had some very nice ones. And I got there, and we had badges. We got in badges because actually my cousin Thomas worked for Mark and Kim Bell from Reptile Industries. And Mark and Kim were very nice and helped my dad and I get badges so we get in there early. Despite getting there early, this dude sold out of his red-faced hognose right away. And I remember I bought some hognose that year from Craig Trumbauer because he had some reddish hognose on his table. And he wasn't really he did have them labeled as reds. Mm-hmm. And they were $75 each. I think I bought 2 or 3. I know I bought a couple, 1 or 2 the next year from them. Can't remember what I started out with. I think I started out with 2 or 3. And anyhow, I bought those from him because I could never get a red-faced hognose, and I tried other shows. Everybody would sell out, and he had these, and they were much more reasonably priced. I had only had $500 I'd saved up for the whole year to spend at Daytona. And these red-faced hognose, they were Nebraska locality. And so I line bred those for, about 6-7 years before incorporating them to the extreme red stuff that I later got. So my red lineages are Nebraska locality, originating from Craig Trumbauer. Craig Trumbauer, I didn't get to talk to him at Daytona. He was always really busy. He's a real old school herpetoculturist and herper. And he even wrote a book, and it has a picture of him. And he's got his iconic mustache. And I'd like to talk to him, but I talked to him a little while. I think about it was actually 7 years ago. Last time I was at Daytona because he had some local Mexican hognose on his table at that point. And I asked him, I got real excited. Do you have any planes? And he goes, no, I haven't worked with planes in like 10 years. So roughly around then, like 10 years, I think he said. So it's been like 17 years probably since he's even worked with planes. But he had Montana locale, Nebraska, New Mexico, and I think he had one other one. And his stuff was pretty cool because he was a big cooler bred guy, and he was a big time herper. And that's like kind of a hallmark of a lot of herpers, especially if they're real into it, is locales. Mm-hmm. And I really wish he would have stayed at. I know he has bull snakes and other stuff. It seems like plains hognose aren't his favorite species. Don't know how. Whatever, different taste. Not everybody. I mean, it would be boring if everybody liked hognose. You know, it's like the whole show's just all hognose. So I get it.
Yeah, for sure.
So
it'll be the difference. You know, like when you walk to the shows and everybody says, you know, oh, everything's ball pythons and stuff like that, right?
Yes, and then it'd just be hognose memes all the time. It'd be like people like, you know, the disfigured, like, you know, X-rays, you know, of people, and it'd be like hognose breeder, and then a normal person would be ball python or any other type of breeder. It'd be that. It'd be the opposite. It'd be the inverse of everybody making jokes about ball python breeders, which actually some people have asked me about that before. Actually, I love ball pythons. Ball pythons are a big part of the reptile community and why it's so, you know, to where it's at, where it is currently. And actually, I've always really liked ball pythons because of the genetics, and they're actually really, you know, cool snakes, and they make great pets. So, you know, ball pythons are awesome. But anyway, that was my long thing about the red phase. And I've been incorporating other stuff into my red phase now, too. So my red lines are extreme red, purple line, and then actually a large portion of them are Nebraska locale, but I just kind of mixed them in. And since the strongest points of the reds were extreme red and purple lines, I'd always consider them outcross extreme red, purple lines, kept breeding them, selectively line breeding them until I got those really strong qualities. And I'd always just kind of refer to them as extreme red, purple line crosses. But they do have a decent amount of, a really actually large amount. There's probably more Nebraska locale, Craig Trumbauer origin, red phase, hognose in there than there are purple line and extreme red. And, you know, it would be hard, but if you found somebody with like purple lines that really weren't outcrossed, or let's say from like Justin, because I highly doubt Justin has anything from me with reds in it. But if you were to take a DNA test, ours would definitely be different because mine have a fair amount of Nebraska locale. And that's probably actually helped too with, you know, I mean, outcrossing, especially any of these selectively line bred projects, is very beneficial to the health of the animal and the strength of it.
So we have two super chats here that Eslin had mentioned, and it was actually
Diedrich.
Yeah.
Use the purple line. It is like Justin Mitchum's cousin. And yeah, I mean, he had like I don't know where his purple line started from. I don't think they were Brad Chambers. There's Brad Chambers line reds. Nobody like talked about those, but those were around for a long time. But Brad Chambers may have came from somebody else. And then there was this really pretty red phase line that Dan Eby had them, and actually they ended up he sold them to Justin Mitchum. I remember it was like 2006, and I'd seen these reds on King Snake, and it was Dan Eby, and I'd seen Dan Eby's post a lot, and I always really liked him because he was doing a lot of herping, and because I knew he was in Montana, and I'd always look to see if I had found any hognose. And I probably started seeing him on King Snake maybe it's like 2003, 2004. And so at one point he posted these really nice red face hognose. These things were like at the time some of the best red face hognose I'd ever seen. I was like, man, I should message this guy. And I'm not sure if I messaged him. I don't think I did. I think two other people were talking to him. Like, basically saying I'll do anything to get those reds. And he was like, no. 6 months later, Justin Mitchum had him.
Yeah.
And
so Eslin dropped the message, and this is where it started. He said that he got some of his line before he sold his collection. So I guess he sold out. You know, he sold and got out of hognose.
Well, Diedrich was pretty early though, because that's the thing. So it's like that's the basically from what it sounds like and what can be assumed, and from the history of it, purple lines are extreme reds or closely related. They come from they're very similar to like the Don Shores and those original reds from like Brian Box, but originally from the one thing was stated that there was only one that was originated from Brian Box, but he had a group of them. I don't know. I don't know any of those guys. I mean, I was around, but I was a kid. I was like, my teens, and the internet wasn't like it is today, of course. So anyway, yeah, Diedrich though had some pretty nice stuff, and he actually even made snow purple lines. And the funny thing is, he called those corals before lavender albino was ever made.
Gotcha.
The coral name just kind of never didn't stick, and he didn't really pursue it. But that's the thing, you see this stuff evolve and change, like green hypo hognose. They're called green hypos, and the more extreme variation was called the watermelon. Now you don't even hear them referred to as green hypos. It's just watermelon. And so, it's kind of like language. Things change over time. And that's how, and it's been a very short period of time. And there's not many people that remember it. I mean, even I'm not a good source. I don't think there's really anybody that really remembers it that well, especially looking at the back and forth a couple of people had, and they had conflicting information. Let's just say there's a lot of really nice red-faced hognose. Most of them did start from Lubbock, and then northeast, there's this area where Texas starts getting more reddish. That goes up into Oklahoma. There's a lot of really red ones in Oklahoma. And so, and then, of course, even in like Colorado and Nebraska, there's some reddish hognose. I talked to one guy that doesn't collect, I almost said collect, finds a lot of hognose in Colorado, and he finds greens, brown, kind of more typical, and then like grayish ones, and sometimes even pretty nice red ones. And he goes, man, I found some pretty red ones. And he goes, you should see them. He goes, they're not as red as probably crazy stuff like, you guys are breeding. He goes, but they're pretty red. I said, I know what you're talking about. I've seen, some wild caught red face hognose. I remember in my first 2 years in Daytona, I think it was the second year, somebody had a group of wild caught hognose, and they were pretty scraggly looking. But the one in there was pretty red. I wanted to buy it, but my funds back then were very limited. And I think he won like $175 for it. And it is a pretty red hognose. You can find some pretty red hognose in the wild. It doesn't take, and then if you get those pretty red ones from that right locale, a couple generations. I mean, the ones I got from Craig Chumbar by second, third generation, these things are pretty dang red.
Yeah, and it's the red in the albinos and in other reptiles too. But I mean, in Western Hognose and in other reptiles, is very impressive. And I don't think it's ever going to go out of like style. Everybody's always going to enjoy those and have those in collections. And as you keep the line breeding going on, and more people start, what's it called, breeding different lines together and their own lines, we're going to have a lot more reds to see out there to be able to like reintroduce into the other lines.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's one of like the staples that we're always going to see in the hognose stuff. Like, and it because like how popular when you post one of your, color blast or one of your best extreme red stuff, you probably get a lot of interactions, people asking about it, how much is, how much you're selling it for, right?
Yeah. The red stuff. Yeah. Colors. That's the thing, the really nice contrasting colors, like black and white animals, really colorful stuff, piebald, those are always popular. And yeah, if you can have any animal that's like green, blue, yellow, red, especially red animals, they definitely are very, look at ball pythons. Imagine if you had a red ball python, they have some of these like lavender albino and albino combinations as babies are pretty rich orange, and some are, kind of reddish or getting closer to there. And, that's, it's even leopard geckos, that's the pursuit, trying to get like a true red, leopard gecko. And if you do have that, yeah, they go for quite a bit of money because they're very desirable because they're a very good looking animal.
Mm-hmm. So with your reds, then you have your lemon ghost stuff. Yes. That originated from your Arctic line as well, right?
It got bred into my Arctic line. My very first hognose I ever owned was actually he's the founder of Lemon Ghost. Okay. I posted a picture of him on my stories a couple times more recently. Because then when I was talking to Brandon about this stuff, I was like, let me go through my old stuff. And I found a lot of old photos. So I was coming across mostly old fishing photos. I wish I had more pictures of my snakes. It doesn't seem like I have many on 35 millimeter. Yeah. And, so there was like a large gap. But I do have pictures of the original Lemon Ghost hognose, the founder, and my very first hognose I had ever owned too. I just kind of got lucky that, my first hognose I bought was something slightly unique. And he wasn't crazy looking. And he's most likely Texas locale. That's where the majority of hognose at that time in the mid and late 90s were being collected out of. And that would have been, 96 or early 97. Because I think I was close. I was 9, but I think I was closer to 10 when I got it. Because I know I didn't get it right on my birthday because it was a long endeavor to get a hognose back then. I've talked about that a few times. The third show I was told, because we get there early, that I told they sold the last hognose, and at that time they were all wild caught pretty much. So it's like these people that are selling them had a bunch of different species they're either breeding, or a lot of times they were reselling a lot of wild caught stuff. And, you know, there would always be like 1 or 2 hogs the whole show. And one person like, well, I just had one, but I sold it. So the third time it happened, I started crying because it's like, this is like bullshit. And then my dad's like, well, what do you want me to do? He goes, it's part of it. You'll eventually get one. You'll eventually get one. And then it was like a few months later, finally got one.
You know,
almost didn't, but
yeah, it was like, all right, we need to go herping and find one of these things, you know.
Pretty much at that point, you know, I mean, I was a kid, and my dad, like, he wouldn't have known what to do, but, you know, he talked to the right people. Yeah, that would have been the better, almost easier at that fucking point. Yeah. It was insane.
Yeah. That's funny. You know, and no, we're talking about like your lemon ghost, your red stuff, your red lines, and these are 2 line bred traits. And I really want to get into the line breeding process with you, because it seems like right now you have the longest, you know, well, you have the lemon ghosts and your reds that are very long line bred, you know, hognose. And I want to get into the process of how you started it and then how it's involved through today's day.
Well, when I started it, I didn't really know much, even though I read Reptiles magazine a lot, and I had like this drive and desire to really want to learn and understand, because that's like how I love reading, but if it's not something I'm interested in, I don't want to read it. So I did not excel at school, obviously, because that's like how, you know, how I learned. Basically, if I'm really intrigued by it, it comes more naturally. But, you know, it took a long time. You know, I'd say, you know, I mean, it was a learning process, and, you know, I'm still learning even now, of course, but I don't know how long, it took me to really kind of completely get it figured out. But the one thing I will say is, if you're going to selectively line breed anything, you know, that's the one thing that's tough about selectively line breeding, is if you want to do it without adding new animals, because you kind of always have to have something new to add into it. Well, how do you do that? You need to start out with a larger amount. You need a large base of animals. You can't just start with like 2 or 3. I mean, you can, and then initially incorporate some. So that's what I would say with, like, you know, a more, you know, like a breeder that doesn't want to have like thousands of hognose or a ridiculous amount. You can always, you know, get new lineages from a trusted source or a friend, or you can even go, not so much like partners, but an agreement. Like, you know, actually my one friend and I did that. He's breeding his own line of this one project, and I have my multiple lines of it. Actually, I don't really need any from his line, but I would actually like it. It would definitely be beneficial. And so he's like, well, I'm going to have these. And so I'm like, that's actually a good idea. And so I really shouldn't say need. It's not like 100% necessary, but it's definitely very helpful to get these, you know, additional lineage. So you could always do that. Like, somebody has these lemon ghosts, and, you know, and that's how I'd, you know, work it. You know, I'd have a lemon ghost, and I'd breed them into this lemon ghost and breed them into this, and keep splitting it off. The more you split it off and the larger base you can establish, the longer you can breed these animals for. You know, and then there's examples of, let's say, like black knight leopard gecko. I could tell by the eventual outcome that they did not start with a large base, because you start getting tail kinking, slow growth, and, you know, very poor fertility, which is pretty crazy for leopard geckos, because they can take quite a bit of line breeding. And so these were line bred pretty heavy. They went heavy into paint on those guys. And so they were, outcrossing was extremely beneficial. And outcrossing and then breeding back, that's a whole other different thing, because it's funny, like, you know, outcrossing and then breeding back can actually have some extremely beneficial outcomes other than just genetic diversity. You can actually amplify coloration too, because you can garner new polygenics. Polygenics, I wouldn't say it's definitely not unlimited, but you can always acquire through a new lineage a new set of allele variations that could possibly add into your current project. So the thing is, there, you know, is definitely benefit to keeping a line, let's say, like pure. Eventually, they do have to be outcrossed. So eventually, like there will be no. Though actually, I'm seeing the last of OG Womas. I still have OG Womas. These are pure Woma to Woma. these were from a decent base, but they're not really outcrossed much at all. And these things, they're actually very powerful with their outcrosses. I can breed them to certain stuff and get Woma's first generation. And Woma is obviously one that's kind of hard to obtain. And these ones are extremely strong. I started noticing issues, though, even though I selectively line bred them fairly well, where their structure is actually like pretty immaculate. Their structure is really good, especially for one that's probably becoming more inbred. But I started seeing some fertility issues among the females. And at this point, I'm like, yep, they're probably going to be needing outcrossing, and it's going to be very beneficial. But I'm probably not going to sell any more OG Womas. The Woma males, OGs, actually breed very, very well, and they're very powerful. But at this point, I don't see a reason to actually part with any more. I'm going to try to still probably make some more, where I will have some to make available. But I am outcrossing them into other lemon ghost and lemon ghost related adjacent animals and having good outcomes. But that's the thing. You always need to have a little bit of outcross. But as you selectively line breed with high percent animals, you can actually increase the quality of the characteristics and actually make a better form of an animal, even though it might be, let's say, not appear 100%. So like the lemon ghost, let's say like in 50 years from now, as long as people are doing a pretty decent job, they should be like substantially better looking than lemon ghosts that exist now.
Yeah. We have a question from Patriot Hog Alfred. What morphs does Purple Line enhance? And I think it can enhance every morph, but what do you see that it works best with stuff you've bred?
Well, the most obvious one is albino.
Mm-hmm.
The other ones, lavender, it's definitely going to have an impact on it. And I've made some Purple Line, extreme red corals that have, that definitely some noticeable phenotypic differences, like stronger pinks, snow, but that's, an albino combination. You could do it with of course, Sable. I've seen some really nice, like rich orangey pumpkin colored Sables, and they're kind of reddish looking. And the thing is, you got to remember the Sables were actually Sables were a tough one, because that's one of the first things I actually did was breed Sable to one of my best purple extreme red lines. And the first results weren't that great, because the locale of Sables is really the antithesis of red locales. They're like really dark. They have they're more greenish. They're like more grays, darks, browns. Is there red tones in there? Sure, they have some pinkish in them, but really hardly any red natural tones in that locale. So when you do that, then you're taking a big step back versus outcrossing to something that's going to complement it. That really didn't complement it at all. It kind of like nulled it big time. It nerfed it. So then it's taken more generations. And there isn't really any high percent, in my opinion, Purple Line Extreme Red, or any Purple Line or any Red Line Sable stuff really out there. There's starting to be now, and there's some decent ones. Or I shouldn't say that. I've actually seen some very nice ones. And anyhow, in more years, I think those will get a lot better. So Sable, Swiss Chocolate, of course, because Swiss Chocolate is fairly similar to Sable. Mm-hmm. What else could we do with it? I mean, you could put in a caramel. Caramel definitely nerfs pigment to a degree, because you can see that they're like tans and stuff. But just because it nerfs it doesn't mean it's not going to enhance it. Essentially, anything that still has a pigment palette left to it will still enhance it. Even putting in an Xanthic is going to change it a bit. You might get some of my Xanthics that are high percent purple extreme red line actually have pinks in them. A decent amount of pinkish and purple hues to them.
Yeah. With the Swiss chocolate, especially, right? Like starting to breed more of those polygenic stuff, it's really going to be able to see, I think it's going to be able to see the difference in the Swiss chocolate and Sable. Because I think that, it's going to work more hyper melanistic than the Sable is so far. At least that's what I'm seeing with just let's say a plain, albino, or that doesn't have any polygenics and stuff like that. And with the polygenic breeding, if you were to start today, or somebody wants to start a, let's say they want to start some lemon ghosts or some red lines, and they're a hobbyist breeder or a smaller size, breeder, how many pairs would you start with? would you
Oh,
recommend?
to start a polygenic project, let's say just lemon ghost, and the starting with, oh geez. Well, starting, you could always just start with one pair, then add later. But that's a terrible answer. That's not the answer you're looking for.
Yeah.
Something more descriptive, for a base where you don't have to reinvest in anything for probably 5-7 years, maybe like 4 pairs. I'd like, the more is the better though. So I like that question because it's like a tough one to answer, and there's really not the most correct answer would be like
as many as possible.
Yeah, pretty much as many as possible. And then just go like you're the lemon ghost guy. That's your whole collection, and I'd be a little envious of that because I'm like, this guy gets to go just all lemon ghost, and I'm like, I want to do that, but I can't. I got all these other projects.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the thing, if you really want to capitalize on one, focusing on like one really main project is really good for a polygenic, but at the same time, I mean, I would say chasing them all is kind of the best, reds, lemon ghost, greens. I do not much with some of my lemon ghost and Woma stuff kind of covers greens. So I don't really have any kind of green lines. I used to have a bunch of green hypo and watermelon stuff, but that got outcrossed. It's basically non-existent now.
Yeah. And then, so like, let's say 4 pairs, I think it's a really good, start point for any like new project or even line bred stuff. Right. Especially like now we're getting to the, triple quad, recessive projects and stuff like that. And if you're starting from hets or single visual hets and stuff like that, I think 4 pairs is a good number for that stuff. Because at the end of the day, especially for the recessive stuff, it just helps your odds on producing the visuals.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's one nice thing. You got some genetic diversity. Then you have more opportunities to hit the projects you want. And then, incorporating polygenics too and the stuff like you said, like multiple recessives is going to be a lot of fun because now you're going to get these polygenic, qualities that are influencing your projects, and they'll have some pretty nice outcomes because you definitely, I mean, who had a really nice hognose collection was actually Brian Barczyk. I used to get like some of my, my first head exanthic I bought from him, and actually a lot of my exanthic stuff. But anyway, the one thing is though he didn't have any polygenics, so it was actually a very interesting collection. He did have like a little bit. I remember he had these ones he said were a little reddish, but overall his PPAs and his exanthics and his albinos and the everything he had, like the hets, and he had some caramels too, all looked normal. They were like straight out of like Colorado or Texas, kind of brownish looking hognose. They were like, it was kind of crazy because he had this really cool like hognose collection. He had all these awesome morphs, but all that hets and past hets, they all looked like the most normal hognose. Even my head exanthic male I got from him, I remember they looked like they looked more like northern locale. They were like darkish. They almost looked like a Minnesota or like a Montana or Wyoming locale. They were kind of grayish themselves, the normals.
Yeah.
And now I have some head exanthics that are very red.
Yeah. And with I got into that project this year and producing some animals from Purple Line Extreme Red, albino super conda female from you, and then a Purple Line Super Arctic Snow from Eslin that we did. And the difference, even with Arctic in those animals and the color saturation of the reds and pinks, it's like none other that I've seen. You've produced some really cool, what's it called? The Purple Line Extreme Red Snows, right?
Yeah.
You have a couple of generations of that stuff already.
It has a big impact. Yeah, it sharpens stuff up. It adds, it's pretty interesting because, like the xanthic trait doesn't completely remove the xanthophores and erythrophores. There's still some like the remnants of it. So yeah, it's definitely influenced by the polygenics. As you can see, some of the snows turn out pretty dang pink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, with all those line breeding stuff, and now you're releasing this new trait, Symphony. How did you start this project, and what did the first animals that you saw either experiencing this expressing this trait, what made those keep those animals and keep line breeding that stuff?
Well, the one I had is actually the very first Moonstone I ever made. Actually, had the symphony trait present in him, and I thought, because at that time he was the second Moonstone ever made, and I thought mine was just like a really nice looking one. I was like, this looks weird. I was like, it doesn't look like. I was like, I don't know why it has this kind of chain link pattern. It really shouldn't. But I bred them and I produced like one that kind of looked like that. I produced some other like, nice snakes, and I didn't really think too much of it. But I ended up breeding some of those animals back and some of the, outcross siblings back to each other. And that was about, it was like 2 years ago. Yeah, and that's when I started, and I started seeing that characteristics come up, show up a lot in the offspring, and some even stronger. And then I was like, oh, this is actually something. And at first, I mean, the way it was appearing, I'm like, this is like, behave more like mutant-like behavior. This isn't like your typical wild type, poly, like a red phase or a yellow phase or a green phase, or something that's a little more like, variable and hard to control, like tiger, or even like Woma. But anyway, so, once I seen these individuals, and I showed them to like just a few close friends and stuff, and people had seen them, and they would like ask, because I hit some like, super Arctic and super Arctic conda versions. And in the conda, it reacted really wildly. And here's the cool thing is it's very consistent. So this is a very strong and domineering behavior. It's not dominant, but it has domineering behavior. And so I'm like, well, that's pretty good, especially with this doesn't really have any selective line breeding yet. So that means with selective line breeding, you'll be able to increase that power. And that will be very interesting to see, because I'm still in the early stages. And if this was like an incomplete dominant, I'd probably hang on to the project a little longer because it's more controllable. Polys, though, are kind of a little more out of my control because I have these ones that are related to the project. And so it's a little messier. It's not as constrained. It's a little more complicated. And I don't have room to set up 40 or 50 new snakes for a whole new project. I have a lot of hognose, and I don't want to just keep increasing. I was going to put an addition on, but that's really actually just to kind of expand and spread things out a little more, and not really add much, because I'm like, I got to start selling these. So it's kind of like, that's why I'm releasing them what I would normally consider early. Now, if I had popped up with these, like 10, 12 years ago, I would hang on to like all of them and try to work with this for a few more generations before releasing it. But this is kind of intertwined with my Moonstone project because it popped up in my Moonstone project. And some were very low chance pass at toffee. A couple of the parents didn't even prove out toffee. And then later on, there were a few that started producing some toffees. And so I actually ended up producing a toffee, Arctic Toffee Symphony this year too. So that was pretty interesting. And I talked about it at the Reptile Talks. That was the initial release. And that was like what I said. I was like, I'm going to be releasing a new trait and discussing the genetics of it at the Reptile Talks, which was actually a lot of fun because it's kind of like a reptile breeder convention get together. Okay. And that's where it was. It was a symposium. And there were some people there with some like pretty extreme alkaloids, like Dr. Stahl. And anyway, I brought a table of animals and other hognose breeders came out. So then I kind of had basically it was like a mini reptile show, and then combined with the symposium. The symposium, I didn't talk about the new Morph though. I just talked about the new Morph on Saturday and Sundays for whoever wanted to come over and talk about it. And I had them there available. So Anthony was one of the people there. Riccardi, he was there.
And you sold some of those animals that show, correct?
Yeah. Actually, the pictures of that Arctic Symphony I showed you, I really didn't want to sell that one. Yeah. Anthony bought it though. That's like the best. That's like my best. Probably I have like two other contenders. I have two other Arctic Symphonies. Because since the Symphony, because some people are like, well, are all Symphonies Super Arctics? I'm like, no. I'm like, the friggin' trait just popped up within the lineage. I was like, I didn't have I was like, so my lowest form of the trait mixed with other genes is just Arctic. I don't have a Symphony by itself, but you can look at the Arctic Symphonies and see like, wow, those are pretty wild looking just for an Arctic, especially the one Anthony got. I have an adult female like that, and she's actually in cool down. She's like around 2.5, so I'm going to try to breed her. Hopefully I get a really nice clutch out of her. Anthony's is really stellar. It's a very nice one. And so, yeah, I still have her here because that's the one thing I'm like, going to ship her to him later. So he knows about it. So basically, I show her off all the time. I was like, this isn't even my snake. That's a cool snake. It's not mine.
That's funny. So, I'm gonna bring up some of the pictures that you sent, so people can, take a look and see what we're talking about and have an idea. If you were to, I would say,
Anthony.
So this is the animal that's not yours, but you show
Not
off.
mine.
But you produced her, right? And
yes, I did hatch her.
Yeah. So if you were to like identify this project, you would say line bred trait.
This is line bred, but this is one of the things that, the funny thing is, like, polygenics, is, like I said, it's just a definition of the motive and inheritance of like wild type alleles. So all line bred traits are, predicated, or they are, polygenic traits. Selectively line breeding are polygenic traits. But see, you could selectively line breed. You could technically selectively line breed while continually outcrossing, but that's going to be harder to control for obvious reasons. But let's say if you took red-faced hognose from all across the United States, you could selectively line breed without really inbreeding, or you can do minimal inbreeding or stuff that I really wouldn't consider, negative inbreeding. Because the thing is, inbreeding does occur naturally in wild populations of reptiles. So that's one thing that I don't like about the definition of inbreeding. It's not that I don't like it; it just needs to be explained a little more thoroughly. That there's a difference between, somewhat natural inbreeding and then this or like more intense inbreeding. These don't have that much inbreeding going on. So they're minimally line bred. This is minimally line bred. And so that's the thing. Inbreeding is okay. Line breeding is okay. This has to be done, like we're talking about, in the larger base and stuff like that. But that's the cool thing about these is that they are exhibiting mutant-like behavior. So this is the spectrum of polygenics. It's like everything. The spectrum is very large. This is deviating more on the side of extreme impact. And it's it's a recombination of alleles. And this new recombination of alleles is giving rise to this interesting phenotype that can be increased through more selective line breeding. Where we can take it, I don't know. And the cool characteristics about this snake is just look at it with your eyes. But then, too, if you look at it, you can see, look at it from afar first. You can see there's, quite a bit of black on it. But then if you zoom in and you look close, you'll notice most of the black is actually in between the scales. And while there is black on the scales, it's pretty minimal. This black concentration,
especially on that head stamp there.
Yeah. Look at the saddles, too. You'll notice all that black is webbing in between the scales. And you can see that naturally with Arctic. So, basically, that does occur naturally with Arctics. This is definitely more extreme with the Symphony. The Symphony is reacting very well with Arctic and Subarctic, and it reacts very strongly with Anaconda, too. And I suspect a regular Symphony, non-Arctic, is going to look kind of like this, but more, of course, like brown, more kind of like normal coloration, but it's going to have really faded, reduced pattern, a lot of freckles, a lot of kind of lighter tones, and then the black is going to be more in between the scales.
And this year you did a Symphony to Symphony pairing, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I did multiple. Actually, all those babies I sent you pictures of are Symphony times Symphony. Now, the one was kind of like not the best expression one. It was from the lineage. But yeah, the two of the clutches is from pretty nice Symphony to Symphonies. Yeah. The one was pretty interesting because they were both Subarctic Symphony condas, but I didn't really want to do conda to conda because I didn't want to hit super conda because I think super conda is going to take away from it.
Gotcha.
And later, I of course I eventually want to do it, but I didn't want to do it yet. But anyway, when I did it, I didn't have like many eggs. I think that was the clutch there. That is. And how many are in that one? 11. And out of 11, about half of them are conda and half of them are not, and one super conda. I'm pretty sure the one Symphony Subarctic isn't conda, but someone can have such crazy elongated connecting pattern, and it was so conda-ish looking, I thought it was a conda, but it turned out not to be. Yeah. That's what it's looking like there.
So I didn't label this one. This one was, I'm going to share now. This one here.
Yeah, that's a cool one. That's an Arctic Conda Symphony. And if you look at it, it still has like kind of this like weird like almost looks like tiger muskie, which is a hybrid between northern pike and muskie, like a tiger muskie, like faded, shattered pattern along the sides. And it almost kind of looks like a frosted, but this is an Arctic Anaconda Symphony. I showed it on my one live that I did. I didn't post that live, though. It was kind of like where people were talking to Discord late at night, and they're like, they wanted an early release on the Symphony to talk about it. This is a few weeks ago, and that one had just hatched, and we were talking about it. I was like, let me do a live. And so we did this little live with about like 30 people, and this was one of the cool ones. This belly's crazy. Here's the thing, though. I don't really want to promote his cool belly pattern as a
trait
as a feature, because there's only 2 like that have it. Most of them don't have this crazy belly, but this guy's got a really crazy belly, and his head and everything, his coloration kind of looks frosted like. But
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, Conda and Symphony react very strongly together, very consistently. And see, that's the other thing is certain polys. That's the thing, like Woma, it reacts. Even strong Womas, they react fairly consistently with Conda. Most of these polys don't react that consistent. Lemon Ghost, and Woma reacts, again, pretty well, but this seems to be reacting even better and even stronger. I'm not really getting many condas at all that don't have large impact. As long as it's Symphony times Symphony, the impact has been strong across the board.
Yeah, and then this was the belly on this one, which is a cool belly, right?
It is
right here. And do you think because of the lack of actual pattern is affecting the belly pattern as well?
Well, the thing is, it's like that's the Symphony reacting with Conda as far as the lack of pattern on the body, because every time I've made an Anaconda Symphony, a lot of them are almost patternless. This one, though, seems to be something a little new. It's probably an additional allele with the additive effect, because that's the thing how these polys work. There's multiple alleles, and they have more and more of an additive effect. This one probably just has more allele packing for this Symphony trait, or alleles that contribute to it. And so that's the thing. The Anaconda, even though it's a mutant, contributes to this, reaction with these these phenotypes we're seeing here. But the lack of pattern on the belly, it's definitely not due to the lack of pattern on the top, because I have other Symphony Conda pairings that are pretty much like patternless looking. They look patternless. They almost look like super Conda, some of them. So it's not super exciting. Like, hey, you found another way to make a super Conda without it being a super Conda. Sure did. But the super Arctic Symphony Condas is where the real power's at, where it's very interesting.
Yeah, and we're gonna get to those because those are really, when I saw those pictures, they're very interesting. And one of the hot topics right now with genetics and stuff like that is the genetic testing, the shed testing that's going on.
Yes.
Lauren James did a super chat and is asking if is genetic testing far away? I'm not 100% sure. I haven't got any updates that I've spoken at least to or that I've seen from Rare Genetics. The company has the heading of the shed testing for reptiles. I know they're asking for people to actively send sheds in so they can have, I guess, a backlog of sheds. So when they have mapped the genome, they can start testing for genetics and stuff like that. Have you heard anything? Any updates?
I know they're fairly they're not. It sounds like in about a year they'll have it. They're already saying to save your sheds and start sending them in. It's gonna happen.
Yeah. What do you think when you have something new like this and sending a shed in? How much time, with the experience you have of line breeding and stuff like that, how much time you think it will cut down on figuring it out? And especially because line bred, you can figure out if you've line bred something maybe from a shed testing because it's going to hit some different alleles. There might be some different markers on it, right? But you still got to do the legwork.
Yeah. I like that frame of that question that you presented. That's really it's really good because the genetic shed testing is mainly going to be, of course, used for mutants, recessive and incomplete dominance that might be hard to differentiate, especially in ball pythons because you have an animal with 12 genes in it. What the hell is this? Get this tested here, figure out what the hell's going on. But with this it's an interesting one. You could do say genetic testing, let's say from different red lineages, and probably be able to tell how unrelated they are. Defining and finding the alleles that are contributing to these, I don't think they're going to be able to do that because these are going to be closely related animals, and there's going to be a lot of common alleles shared that aren't participating in the allele formation for colors that we're seeing here, these phenotypical colors that we want to see, and they're not going to be able to differentiate that. So I think genetic shed testing, when it comes to polygenic stuff, I mean, it's possible. Like, see, you need something to contrast it against. I'd have to send them in pure lines of Loma LG, and then you could get a contrast to see, like, is this closely related?
Mm-hmm.
But are you going to be able to find the common alleles that are contributing to this? You know, I'm not a geneticist, but I'm going to say no way, because the animals are going to be too closely related. There's going to be a lot of common alleles that are contributing to other things, you know, so that's going to be a tough one. I don't think it's going to come in handy there.
Yeah. And, you know, once we find if, you know, the next recessive or incomplete dominant, or maybe even dominant gene, it's definitely going to help. It's going to, you know, because they can pick up those mutant genetic markers and stuff like that. But with, especially with the Arctic, if you would have had that shed testing, how quick would you have been able to develop and release the Arctic?
Well, actually, here's the problem with it. That's the one thing with this genetic shed testing. You need a decent sample size of these animals, so they can contrast fairly unrelated ones and find these common single mutant alleles. So it really wouldn't have been helpful at all. I would have needed like to be like midway advanced. But the thing is, like, when I discovered Arctic, I didn't know what I had until I finally bred two together. And my first one was actually an Arctic. Well, the first one that I bred to an Arctic was an Arctic Lemon Ghost to an Arctic. And I was like, well, I'm going to breed this really nice looking Arctic back to this, to the mom, this Arctic Lemon Ghost combo mom. And, you know, basically see what's going on here, see if this is going to increase the coloration here, see why this Arctic variation one came out, see if I can replicate this. And instead it turned out to be a mutant incomplete dominant, which was, of course, extremely exciting and changed the whole course of my life and the hognose community. Anytime there's a new genetic mutation, such as Swiss or Sable lavender, that's occurring. And, you know, so that's the thing, the genetic shed testing, there's some pros and cons to it. There's some very big pros. There's some fairly decent cons. The one con that we'd all be worried about is it's going to essentially make heterozygous. Like you could just buy, like, let's say if the genome of Swiss is already developed, you could just buy a het Swiss and breed it to everything and just get genetic shed testing. You don't need to buy a visual. So it's actually going to bring down prices a lot faster. So it's going to kill the market a decent bit, and that's going to have impact there. Now, you can't do a ton of them, because the more you do, well, you could, but you're going to have to put the money into genetic shed testing. But now the money you're going to isn't going into other hognose breeders or supporting a community. It's basically, some of it's small parts going to rare genetics, and basically it's going to be this chase to pursue this project with the most small amount or limited money as possible. But there's still going to be room for, like, say, if you want to buy a Swiss chocolate visual, you don't have to worry about that. You don't even have to do any genetic shed testing. You know, you could just breed it to all these and not worry about the combos. The biggest pro with the genetic shed testing, though, is actually genetic diversity. I can now take a het Swiss chocolate. I can now take a het leucistic. I can now take a het albino and indefinitely outcross it and keep doing genetic shed testing if I wanted to. And I can now treat it as an incomplete dominant. Treat it as an incomplete dominant, not it is, but you're unmasking that single allele copy through the genetic shed testing. So now you're you know, you don't need to know the phenotype, you just know the genotype through this test. So there's really big things to be done there. You know, you can now outcross a very inbred animal very easily if it's a mutant that's been mapped. But there's definitely some pros and cons to it. But yeah, the one thing is, you mapping early, you can't do it because, like, the Swiss chocolates are all too closely related. Now they're probably getting to it. Now when I raise these up and outcrossing them, so another like 2 or 3 years. But at that point, the Swiss will probably get to a cheap enough price where just buying a hat and then doing this whole runaround, making all these past is going to be a hard one to, like, you know, balance out financially. So that's the thing. It's an interesting dynamic to be introduced.
And also too, like, yes, you can do it, but do you see yourself with the quantity of hognose you produce and the projects you're doing? Because you get the pod sets. If you're doing, you know, double, triple recessive stuff, you're going to get the pod sets if you're on a new project, right? Do you see yourself in the future using it constantly, or maybe once in the blue and stuff like that?
Unfortunately, I'll probably be using it. Not super frequently, but I
Yeah,
will be using it.
yeah, yeah. It's gonna be one of those things like catching up with the times. If like you have to stay, you have to use it to stay up with the times and further
It
your
is.
projects and stuff like that.
Genetic shed testing, AI. That's what I mean about the reptile community is always changing. Another 5, 7 years is going to be fucking cyborgs working with hognose snakes. So right now we have AI and genetic shed testing. That's the current. That's the current adaptation. And there's a lot more AI, a lot more. And it's actually been a great thing. I mean, look at Morph Market. Morph Market has been, really tremendous. It's actually very, very great. And Darian's done a great job of expanding it. John Lehman actually, did a terrific job for the whole design and development of this new idea. And, and everything's being incorporated. But, it does get to a point where it's like there's only so much time you have. That's why, like, I can't really do, Husbandry Pro. I can't log all my stuff. And I'd have if I did, I would never even look at my phone.
It would be a mission just to enter your animals, man.
Yeah.
Especially since you have everything handwritten, right? If you had like a spreadsheet or something like that, it helps, and they've done it. They've helped people transfer spreadsheets or like what's the other ReptiScan and stuff like that into Husbandry Pro that have large collections. But if you're handwritten stuff, it's almost I don't know. I wouldn't even want to. Yeah, I wouldn't even know how long it would take to input.
If you're in the room though all day every day, which I am, you get a pretty good idea. Even if I am like sometimes slightly forgetful, if you think hard enough, you pretty much know very close proximity to the relation of literally everything. Yeah. Even if you get into the animals of like having like 1,000, it's really not that hard.
The cool thing that I think you would enjoy and benefit from is the family lineage, the lineage trees that it creates when you have animals,
I would like that.
Breeders, and then animals that you're producing, and then animals produce that breed and stuff like that. It keeps track of the whole lineage.
I have heard about that one. That one is I will be. That is definitely one that's like I'm going to be a little envious of it when people have ones in like 20 years from now and they still doing husbandry products like that. I'm like, yeah, it's like mine looks like shit, but I kind of have most of it.
yeah, man. And before, and I'm gonna do a quick break, but Kat, this is one of the things we're talking about, the Discord. She's like, just give me a hognose LG. She needs one of the OG lemon ghosts.
Yeah, you can, not for $2, for more.
Yeah,
just make a meme about it.
Yeah, and then Paragon, with the heckling back. So that's really cool. But guys, I'm gonna take a quick second. I want to shout out our sponsors and partnerships. Quick video, and then when we get back from the video, we're gonna get to like the Super Arctic Symphonies and the Super Conda Symphony pictures that we have.
I want to take this moment to mention and thank our sponsors and partnerships. Sea Serpents is our official sponsor, known for their exceptional customer service and top quality. They offer a wide range of PVC racks and incubators designed to meet the needs of every reptile enthusiast. Their products are built with durability and efficiency in mind, ensuring your reptiles have a safe and comfortable environment. Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional breeder, Sea Serpents has the perfect solution for your growing collection. Want to take your reptile husbandry and record keeping to the next level? Use our exclusive code CLOVER60 for a free 60-day trial of Husbandry Pro, an all-in-one reptile tracking software that will streamline your reptile care routine. When it comes to shipping or receiving our reptiles, Ship Your Reptiles is our top choice. Trust them to handle your reptiles with care. Use code CLOVERS15 to save on your next shipment. Feeding your reptiles a varied diet is essential, and Reptilinks offers raw, whole prey reptile food trusted by the best zoos and keepers in the industry. Use code CLOVER to save $5 on your next order. Thank you for your support.
All right, guys. Like I said, I always say any of the companies or products that, sponsor with partnership, I use myself. So I back them. If you guys have any questions about them, let us know. But now back to the Super Condas and Super Arctic Symphony stuff. And the last one I'm gonna save is the Moonbeam Symphony, because that one really caught my eye. But we're gonna go through some of these here. Let me share it here. There we go. Let me actually turn this one. So Super Arctic Conda Symphony, right?
Yeah.
Here. Was this the one that you were not 100% sure if it was Conda or not because of
No.
Okay.
This is a subadult female. This one I'm like certain is a Conda.
Yeah.
But this is a cool example. Like if you look at that nice thick black stripe, but then if you zoom in, you'll notice most of the black is just between the scales. It's not much on the scales actually. Mm-hmm. There's some tipping, but the majority of this black's between the scales, and then it's got the cool, markings on the back of the nape of the neck, which is very indicative. And that's kind of where the name came from. They look like bass clef notes on the back of the head on some of the original Super Arctic symphonies. So bass clef, that led into the symphony name.
Okay. Yeah, that, and you answered my questions, and I asked the symphony name. How did it come about?
Yeah, it's a unique name.
Yeah.
It's a unique name. I'm not like the markings on the back of the head. I was like, looked like bass clef notes. Mm-hmm. And then somebody else was like suggested the symphony name, and it's kind of like it was talked about. And I was like, well, it's a fitting name. I was like, it's very interesting.
I hope people caught the reference I did on the thumbnail, with the music note on it. So here's there's a Super Arctic Symphony, no Conda in this, right?
Yeah, that's one of the ones where it'll make you think it's a Conda, but that one's not a Conda. And that's kind of like the one that turned out, I guess, not to be Conda. I don't know. It's still it looks crazier than that. It looks like a Conda. It looks like almost like that first one you showed. It almost looks like that. And but out of 12 babies, 12. Yeah, 12 babies. There's like half of them are Conda and half are not Conda. So they could have got bad odds. So maybe I'll do that same pairing again. But I'm starting to think, I'm like, maybe that female is not a Conda, but she looks just like one. But some of these Super Arctic symphonies look a lot like Condas. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at that, it doesn't look like your typical Super Arctic Conda. It definitely look like very peculiar and not like typical at all. But anyway, yeah, that one's not Conda.
Yeah. Let me see which one. So the same snake, just different pictures here.
Yeah, different picture. Yeah.
This one is really cool. And there's a Super Arctic Symphony Conda, right?
Yes. That one, that's one that I'm pretty sure is a Conda. But now that's what the breeder kind of looked like. That one I'm pretty sure is not Conda now. So this one may not be. I'm pretty certain though. Is like I bet money that this one's a Conda. And yeah, that's the cool thing is like some of these Super Arctic Symphony Condas have these really wild, thick stripes. And that's the thing too. The cool thing is it's very consistent. Now, some of the stripes are more narrow, but they're all fairly bold. I did produce one this year, a Moonbeam Symphony, where the stripe is like kind of more like thin. But generally they have no breaks. They're very complete and they're very thick.
Okay. With the animals you're releasing this year, from these breedings, what are you releasing? What combos?
Well, the majority of them have Super Arctic in them, since the original ones, were Super Arctics and like Moonstones. And so most of these are either going to be Posset Lavender, Het Lavender, and most of them are low chance Posset Toffee too. So yeah, I might have a few Arctics symphonies, Arctic Conda symphonies, Super Arctic Conda symphony, Super Arctic symphony, and then Moonbeam symphonies. I actually have like the one clutch. I got a decent amount of Moonbeam symphonies, and I don't even know. I think I have like one Moonstone symphony. I'll probably be releasing this year too. It's like kind of like a lower expression one, but it's got like the perfect bass clefs and everything.
Mm-hmm. People in the chat are saying this almost looks like a white-sided Florida King, the pattern and stuff.
Yeah, or like a wild, like a Barrent Cal King or something.
Yeah. Have you, other than Conda, like any other polygenic, line bred pattern traits? Have you worked any into the symphony?
No, not yet. I mean, everybody, like, typically there's always something I hold back, and I don't really, like, and it's like, I'm not going to release or show this. And there's a few reasons for that. One of the big reasons is if you show your best one, everybody and their brother wants to buy that one. And that's like that Arctic Conda Symphony with the crazy belly. Yeah. I have, like, there's one of them's in here. Oh, this Paragon. He wants to buy that one bad. I'm like, I don't really want to sell it, man. And so now we have this there's this conflict where it's like, if he offers me enough, I might sell it, but I don't want to sell it. And I'm like, don't even offer me anything. I want to keep it. And so I think that one's just definitely not going anywhere because of its uniqueness. But the main ones I'm going to be releasing, though, are going to be like just the aforementioned ones. And again, they're going to be like Het Lavender and Pastel Lav.
Okay. All right. If somebody was getting into this project, is there one gene or yourself, working the symphony, or one trait you wouldn't want to put it into because you think it will maybe just, not work cohesively or just get rid of it?
So far right now, I really don't see anything. This is a pretty good poly. And that's the one thing I never really finished on, that part. Like, that's my whole point is I already kind of showed all pretty much everything I have. I haven't showed every single symphony, obviously, but I don't have them really crossed into anything else right now. The only thing I didn't show is the Arctic Toffee Symphony. Actually, at Daytona, if people came up to talk to me, I showed a few people a picture on my phone, and they're like, yeah, that's pretty weird looking. And I also have an Arctic Toffee Conda Symphony. And like, that's it. I don't have anything. Like, I have not crossed these into red stuff yet. Really, the main thing is, it's like, this is what I do with like all my polys. Like Lemon Ghost, actually, you'll look at it, like, there's people that have Lemon Ghost Toffees, Lemon Ghost, albino stuff even kind of before I do, and Lemon Ghost Condas. But my main thing is going to be with this too, isn't going to be in a rush to combine it into a lot of stuff. Some of it I will be combining because it needs the good outcross early on is definitely not a weakness I see in this situation. But I need to selectively line breed these and get them pretty strong before outcrossing, like such as my pure OG Womas. Like, I can outcross a pure OG Woma and get really far ahead with any project I want because of the strength is there. Right now, Symphony is inherently strong itself. Again, because not all polys are equal. Like I say, Lemon Ghost definitely is not as strong as Red. Lemon Ghost is definitely not as strong as like a Symphony. Symphony is kind of a little wacky though. It's definitely a little different. It's in a different neighborhood. So I'm going to line breed this a bit and get it really strong before I start doing any real crazy crosses, like into like a Lemon Ghost or a Red.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because I think especially with like your Reds and even like, your Super Conda Reds still get that very strong color on the dorsal. And just adding this, I think, might intensify that color, right?
I think it's good. Well, generally, it's pretty much always a good idea to put any poly into another poly. Mm-hmm. Generally, they're pretty good because all these polys are usually enhancing color or doing something to color. And so you can get something unique or different right away. I mean, there are certain polys. I mean, it's not like a blanket rule. It doesn't work effectively every time. Like, say, like a really good watermelon, since they've been selectively line bred to be really light with greenish shadows and nice pink tones, and they're very like light. If you took like your craziest red that is like balls to the walls, like deep black oxblood red and fucking ultra color saturated, and bred it to this light phase animal, it's not gonna be like a horrible pairing, but they're kind of negating each other, and so then you're kind of like it's almost like two negatives. Mm-hmm. And so they're kind of like outcrosses that are they're not gonna complement each other, but you might make something interesting and then you go from there, and that's gonna be a long process, which is all these projects are a very long process. There's always ways to add to them, and then of course polygenics, there's always something to do. It's always changing and always evolving.
Yeah. So now we have the Moonbeam Symphony, which, like I said, this one really caught my eye. Super, just the Moonbeam on it by itself, it's a really, impressive animal. But the symphony and the distortion of the pattern is really cool on here.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about the Symphony. Like, even if it by itself, it's definitely not like probably, might not be the most impressive to everybody. I don't think it's a must-have trait, but it's definitely a must-have trait if you want to find a way to make consistent striped animals. Again, like I showed some pictures or videos, but it's in the live. Well, eventually I'll get to posting them stuff publicly. Today is my first day posting the stuff publicly. I was posting in Discord a bit. We talked about it there. but every Moonbeam, every Super Arctic Conda Symphony I've made is like damn near perfect stripe. This is like typical. This isn't even like, and that's the thing too. I sent you kind of more like average ones. The really good ones are like the ones I really like are the really wide stripe. But anyway, if you want to find a way to make a perfect striped animal, so this is like awesome because if you want to put this into like a Sable, and I think Sable is going to actually increase the intensity of the stripe. And that's the thing too. You can do, because the thing is Sable and Conda, if you've noticed it, Sable Condas, because of the Sable gene, kind of keeps the Conda from going too crazy.
Correct. Yeah.
You don't see real elongated striped Conda Sables very often. Now the Symphony reacts with Conda very strongly. So my suspicion is not even suspicious. My thought that's plain sight pretty much is that this is going to help Sable Condas a lot. And you might be able to get a whole different type of dynamic phenotype now, with this. So this is going to be very useful for making striped animals. And just having nice, bold striped, thick striped animals, like I kind of like equated these, even though it's a combination, to something like a cryptic clown or like a blade clown, I should say, ball python. Because, if you want to find a way to make a thick, perfect stripe, the one thing is you have to have Super Arctic Conda and Symphony present to do it, but it's very consistent. But you might be able to do just Symphony, Sable, Conda that might do it. But I know with Super Arctic Conda and Symphony and Sable, I think you're going to have really cool effects. And actually, I think the Sable is going to thicken the stripe. So you might find a way to make consistent, ultra thick striped animals there.
And I'm pretty sure you've seen it. Those black, backed sables, and Arctic sables that, from one shed to another, sometimes get that full, even if they're not Conda, they get that full black coloration on the back. I'm thinking like this into that with a line like that is going to be very impressive when you get like that, a really dark stripe down the back on the Sable.
Yeah, I think, so it's going to have some very unique things to, do when you put it with your recessive projects, and it's going to, it reacts really well with Conda. So it's, basically a new pattern trait here. It does change color a bit, but it's more of a pattern trait.
Yeah.
But the only thing that is it's not like, you're of course recessive or incomplete dominant, but again, the polygenics often get overlooked, and a lot of times though gain overlooked actually is not a bad thing. There's usually a lot of opportunity in things that are being overlooked. That's what I've always found. Stuff that's overlooked has been my best opportunities.
Look, man, and like I mentioned, I have some of Jane Seahawk, Jamie's lines into my stuff, and the reverse stripes, the tiger stuff that I have from his lines, I love. And those are all, polygenic and line bred traits. So those are really cool. And I enjoy this. I really like it, even though it's not a, recessive, dominant, or incomplete dominant stuff. I really like, because I like the pattern stuff, which I don't think we have in the Hognose enough, right?
Yeah, true.
And I think that's why, like, the ball pythons are so impressive when you have, like, the pieds, what's it called? And all, I mean, if I can't even list all the different genetics, the morphs they have for, working on the patterns for them. So when I first heard that, and I had talked to you and I heard you talk about that it was a pattern, got me really interested in it, because I like the pattern things. Conda is cool, Super Conda is cool, but to me, like this, the tiger, the reverse stripe, it does it more for me than just a Conda or a Super Conda. We had a question here from Alfred, and same thing, right? The Jag lines. I'm not too familiar with the Jag lines. I haven't taken the time to really look into it. What's your train of thought on the Jag lines?
Well, I don't know a lot about the history, but I remember observing them when I was in my teens. I'd see them on King Snake. It always seemed like there was somebody in the UK with them. And I know like Justin Mitchum had some, but I don't know where he got his from. And that would have been around when I was like 17 or 18. So that was like 19 years ago, getting close to 20 years ago. And who originated the actual Jag lines, I have no idea. I don't know. Somebody in the UK, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's something from the UK. But yeah, I haven't. To me, it hasn't caught my eye, or maybe it hasn't been line bred enough. um, or bred enough to be able to like really figure
It's,
that out.
it's a chaotic one. That's the
Yeah.
thing. It's like it's more, and that's the thing with the polys. Like again, they're not all equal. So that's one thing people can get scared off by polys. But there's again a lot of cool things, of course, you can do with them. Actually, the funny thing is, I've seen it like in the leopard gecko community. I'd see so many times where people would come up with some new trait. And there's not many mutations in leopard geckos. It's actually very small. Most of all these leopard geckos are all polygenics. And somebody would have a new trait, or kind of like a new lineage. Or sometimes it wasn't. Most of the time, it wasn't even a new lineage. It was just rebranding, essentially. But sometimes there would be. And, people would be like, oh, this is a new dominant. This is recessive. And they'd always try to put a label on it to help market it or help increase interest. Or just help put a label on it, because polygenics can sometimes be a little ambiguous, and then people just kind of want to stay away from it a bit. But that's not so much the case anymore. People are more interested in this stuff. But the thing was, these leopard gecko people sometimes would, the way they're treating polygenics would almost be like it was derogatory or it was bad. They're like, well, this is dominant because like that's better, and I can get more money for it. And it's like everything in leopard geckos that holds its value and you get the most money for is a friggin' polygenic. It's like, it's actually kind of stupid when you think about it, because it's like, it's like the opposite. So anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but we're pretty much on topic because that's all we're talking about.
Yeah. What's it called? What do you think, or have you done these already? Pairings of Symphony with those striped condas.
Well, these striped. What striped condas are you referring to?
Like just like those striped condas just pop up and.
Well, okay, like the striped condas that pop up, even though it's like it is some to a degree polygenic interference though. It's kind of like, it's not like Jag, but that's the thing. Again, some of this stuff isn't very consistent. So you can see these certain like reverse stripe line hognose. They seem to be somewhat consistent, but it seems to be these condas are like this. There isn't like an external polygenic appearance that is being incorporated that causes this reaction. And so I think it's like it's definitely a harder one to control, and some of these harder ones to control, they might need more work, and some of them like here, in my opinion, in my experience, there's projects I will abandon. And I don't really fully abandon them, I incorporate them into stuff where like, all right, this might help make a cool appearance later on. Because I've seen it happen. It's fighting upstream. Jaguar is definitely one I'd say is a little bit of a fight upstream. I'm not saying it's like real bad, but I definitely see some people's in the results, and they're not strongly consistent. And that can happen too with it's like Black Knight leopard geckos. Black Knight leopard geckos are very strong, very consistent polygenic, hypermelanistic / sometimes melanistic leopard gecko. But then there's these other hypermelanistic lines, no matter how hard people feverishly and intensely worked on them, never got anywhere close to the point. And so that means the genetic recombination of Black Knights was a lot stronger of a lineage. And so that was the one that ended up, working out. So with Jaguars, what I'd want to do is get anything that was Jaguar looking and incorporate it and selectively line breed it. So, but with these other striped like anacondas, I'm really not that interested in putting them in with my symphonies. I don't think it's like a terrible idea, but it wouldn't be bad for an outcross and breeding back into symphony. But they wouldn't really capitalize on it.
Okay. No, that's I'm pretty sure that people have that thought. And this is like, I always tell people like sometimes like it's a mad scientist project with some of these lines and breeding some of these morphs together, right? Hopefully it looks like this, have an idea, and then once you produce it, you really see it. Are with the symphony pairings, you said you are going to release those animals, right? You're going to have some for sale. Okay, that's cool. And if people are looking for that stuff, how do you get the messages tomorrow morning, tonight, or are you waiting for a little bit?
You can message me now. I mean, some of them aren't ready to go, but I can always ship later.
Okay.
So
cool. Okay. Yeah. So guys, if you guys are looking for the symphony stuff, message Jeff. And somebody brought this up earlier, and I saw it because I'm a big fan of the Swiss. I saw the Swiss the Swiss toxic you made, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was cool, man. What made you want to go that route instead of like other, triple recessives like visual?
I am going other ones. That's just the first one I hit.
The first.
There's a 1 in 32 chance that I hit on it. So
Nice.
Yeah, I hit on it twice. I got 2 and 1 in 32, which is pretty odd. I got some really weird odds this year. I got some pretty really good ones. So I don't know why. It's just very good. I guess I've been screwed over on certain other stuff and like had bad odds, so I guess it's being made up for it now, maybe.
Yeah. Let me see. Do you have that on your Instagram post?
I do.
Yeah.
It's pretty weird looking. It's like a lot more pinkish, like in the background in person. It's pretty nice looking. It's pretty unusual. But the one thing is like, well, the main thought behind that was here's the thing. I'm pretty good at genetics. I don't know everything. I expected the Swiss Toxic to actually be a little darker.
I did too.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be, this is the pigmentation I expected, but more of it, darker and deeper, more saturated.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little telling in what, Swiss, the appearance might be. I'm thinking a lot of those, the melanophores and these, the hypermelanistic qualities are very surface. They're very like close in the upper dermis, because this thing is like pretty stripped. Mm-hmm. Like you'd expect there to be less whitish, versus with a Sable, you expect there to be more because there's more light, scales and there's more contrasting. While Swiss are more heavily saturated and they're more softer. It's like the colors all bleed into each other. It's like dark all over. It's just different shades of darkness. Yeah. But yeah, so I was kind of surprised by that. Actually, I'd say I was fairly surprised, extremely surprised.
Is this a male or female?
It's a male. I hit 2 males. Yeah,
okay.
So I got
because there's that train of thought and that conversation coming up with the Swiss that the darkers are the female, right?
True.
So I wonder if you would have hatched a female, if it would have had a darker color.
I actually already know. There is so much. I actually have an older Swiss Toxic than these. These aren't actually the first ones.
Okay.
I only hit 1, and there's a crazy. That was a 1 in 64. I could it is insane. And actually, the funny thing is, she's lighter than these guys.
Really?
Yeah. So that means she had more pigment, and more pigment was kind of like removed. But I don't know, because it is mostly true. There is sexual dimorphism. I noticed that pretty because the first time I was buying these Swiss from them, I'd go and look. I was like, man, this guy's every Swiss male he has almost looks like a damn Sable with a dark head. I was like, they're a lot lighter. And then all these super dark ones are always females. And then when I started producing them myself, I was like, there's sexual dimorphism, which is very good. It's actually very good. It's giving you, now you have 2 different phenotypes. And then these males, you get variations. You get these darker ones, these lighter ones, and then these pixelated ones. And the pixelated ones are very interesting, and there's a whole different phenotype. And you see some pixelation in the girls, but not as drastic with the males. And that's mostly because the males and females, their hormones are different. And so these hormones are impacting their pigment.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very surprised when you posted that. Like I said, I thought it was going to be a different, outcome of it.
Sure, me too.
Now, do you think, and between the 2 different pairings that you have, or between the 2 pairings of the Swiss Toxic that you have, 2 separate pairs or same pairs that you redid this year?
They're different pairs. They're unrelated.
Different pairs. Okay. Because I was gonna ask, either the line of Toffee or the Xanthic, because you get those dark Xanthics, right?
You do. I don't think those are going to have as big of an impact though on these. I think it's because it's like Super Arctic Sunburst. That's different though, because Super Arctic and then Sable are a little variable, and Super Arctic's highly variable. But like Super Arctic Sunburst, I have ones that are like pretty much pure white, like close to pure white. They have no pigment. Then these other ones are like neon pink, and they're from the same lineage, and it's just that variation. Of the phenotype of those genes. It's not really like I have some that are like highlighter pink. And, I can tell somebody, like, some of them, they have some red lineage in them, but most of them don't. And I have ones that are highlighter pink that have red lineage, and I have ones that are whitish that have red lineage, and then vice versa.
Okay. Yeah. So, are you gonna put Symphony into Swiss?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's gonna be another cool, interesting to see. I'm pretty sure you're probably already working on it.
Yeah,
uh,
it's early though. I mean, that's the thing.
yeah.
I mean, that's one cool thing about this project. The Symphony stuff is fairly expensive,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not just getting the Symphony. You're getting it's got a lavender toffee project already there, and like like a Moonbeam Pastel toffee already is kind of expensive. So they're expensive anyway. But it's early on. I mean, because a really nice lemon ghost will go for $1,500 to $2,000.
Yeah.
If you have a nice enough lemon ghost, I've sold lemon ghosts for upwards of $2,500. If they're like piss yellow and it's a good size one, and I don't want to let it go, and I have one that I could let go, but I don't want to, those ones end up going for around like that price. So Symphony is early on. You can get a really good polygenic trait that is very impressive and has a lot of impact with conda and super Arctic combinations, and it has a lot more to be discovered with it. So you're not going to be too far behind on me, and you'll actually get ahead of me on certain stuff because I can't put this thing into everything. It's just there's too many hognose. I love my hognose, but that's the thing. I have limitations, and I'm at my limitations at this point. My facility's filled up, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you have other projects and stuff you're trying to prove out as well with this, and there's got to be, like you said, there's got to be a limit on how many animals. Personally, just how many animals you can clean, feed, and all that stuff, right? Compared to space too.
The good news is I have people that help me and stuff, and so I can actually keep stuff cleaner than I was when I was more doing it by myself because I don't have to be preoccupied, and they already know my whole system, and it's pretty organized and put into place. And they're like, all right, let's clean all these today, and so it's really nice because then I can enjoy just having these enclosures cleaned more often. But it doesn't mean I could get just keep expanding. It's getting to the point where it's I don't want to do massive bulk wholesaling.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, I think that's a very important what's it called, number to have, figuring out what's your max number of breeders along with hatchlings, because the hatchlings is what takes the most of the time.
It's the hatchlings, and it's tough though too because you can if you really key in and you can get your hognose all to produce fairly well, and you hit that 90 percentile fertility, you can end up with a lot of hognose very fast. You don't really have to breed that many. You get actually a pretty substantial number sometimes. Like my record for one female is 54 for two clutches, together, 54 babies from one female. That is extremely atypical, but then you have other females, sometimes you get 20 or 30 eggs in a good year. Now, if let's say you breed 10 of those, and let's say you get not so much lucky, but you get that statistical outcome where, hey, these females do produce very well, they're all very healthy, and you get them all pretty much a double clutch, you could end up with 200 some babies. You may have been expecting 70, and that's the thing. Sometimes you breed that many, then you get 50. I've even had it happen. I'll have a group. That's why sometimes I'll have I need to breed 7 of these females. So I know I get what I want, and it's then watch 3 breed really well. Couple have partial good clutches, and 2 just don't go. I end up with 30, 40 babies. But then other times I breed 7, and then I have 140 or 160, and I'm like, damn, I didn't want to make that many. So yeah, you kind of have to be prepared for overflow, and so that's what I do and stuff. But yeah, there's still limitations.
No, for sure. We're getting to the end of the podcast tonight. It was really cool to see the Symphony stuff. Have you seen any post of any other hognose and you say that can be Symphony, or if that's line bred, it can get to the Symphony?
Well, Symphony, from what it seems like for it to, where I have my collection, it's it's definitely very possible because I have seen it with other stuff where you get this, recombination of alleles that make this new kind of variant of phenotype. I did accidentally. Yeah, that's a story. I didn't think I was going to talk about that. I sold some stuff over to some, higher end people overseas. The one guy made 3 symphonies. Oh my God, the drama that unfolded with that shit was insane. It was insane because I was at that point, I was like, well, I'll release some over there. And this one guy was trying to buy some from me at a very high price. I was going to make a lot of money. What I was more surprised was how much money he was trying to resell them for. I was like, this guy's trying to make the same amount I am. I was like, this is ridiculous. So I was like 100% upcharge, and he's trying to sell them to these other really high-end clients that really want this stuff. And then he goes, you didn't tell me you sold other ones. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? He goes, look,
like, I haven't. Yeah.
And no, it's this other guy, and I like him. I don't like, I'd consider him like a friend, but I don't talk to him often. His English isn't that great. But he didn't tell me, and he didn't know what he had. He just thought they were really wacky, and he was selling them for like a lot of money. And his looked really good, but he had 3 of them. And that was it. And I think he sold 2, and he kept 1, and he kept like a partial one, like his sibling, and that was it. And his other guy, they kept talking about, like, there's all these things around, and he's like, here's another one, here's another one. And they'd be telling me this stuff at like 2 and 3 a.m. too, and 4 a.m. Sometimes I was trying to sleep. And so then I was like, you know what? I was like, there can't just be more and more of these. And I went and I was like, I looked at him, I was like, this is the same fucking snake. So then I looked, took all of his pictures, got them all together. I was like, I circled all the spots. I was like, it's the same fucking snake. Shut the hell up. And then, like, I remember I was just like, I was like, normally I could keep my cool. No, actually I can. A lot of times I choose not to because it's kind of fun just to unleash. Because I'm like, I'm tired of this shit. I'm like, it's the same fucking snake, dude. And so then, yeah, I know it's funny. It went on for like a few weeks, and then he started attacking my friend, the other dude, and saying that his weren't real symphonies, and he's saying that I said that. So then I had to send that guy screenshots to say that's not what I said. I said only a few of those weren't. I was like, those 3 definitely are. I was like, those other 2 aren't. They may be from the line. They are going to be carrying it, but those 2 are not. And I was like, no, those ones are very nice. You should keep them. He's like, I already sold like, 1. I think he sold 2 of them. I know he was trying to sell 2, but I don't know if he just sold them. I don't even know what the hell happened. But anyway, so then the other guy wrote up an article about what my symphonies were, and then nobody even bought any because nobody even bought any. And so they were still like, they're still very interested. And so I still interact with some of these people. But see, I didn't really have the official release, but there's a few people over there. I mean, it kind of got leaked, so they know about it over there. And we still go back and forth, and so they're still very interested, but now the price is like different. They were like, they were trying to spend the initial price was actually way too much for a polygenic, even though it's really cool. So now it's a little more down to earth and a little more like feasible. Makes a little more sense.
Okay, no, that's a cool story because like it's possible, right? To when you're first starting that to by mistake, like release it over or sell an animal that was probably carrying that line and stuff.
Sure. Yeah, and I did. Yeah, and I did sell one to one guy earlier over there too for quite a bit, and that's like the only one I had sold over there early release along with the reptile talks. Anyway, because that guy wasn't able to make it to reptile talks because actually he could have, but he doesn't fly. But anyway, realistically, he's not coming. So anyway, this guy had an older one, so his is like 8 months old. And so this other dude's telling me, he goes, he bred it from the one you sold to him. I was like, no, he didn't. He goes, there's been people over here that have bred 8 and 9 months old hognose. And I'm like, I was like, well, it's possible, dude. It's like it's not the norm, obviously, dude. I was like, I don't even know why you have to have this conversation. This is very obvious stuff, right? And so then I was showing him mine. He goes, well, yours are going to take a while to breed. I was like, why? I was like, you said you can breed them in 8 months. Just buy them. You can breed them in 8 months then, dude. And so, the whole thing, like, it was pretty funny. It was a lot of, it's just going back and forth with this bullshit. That's so, crazy. Yeah. But it's all cooled off now.
So we're in the chats. They're saying we're low on the hognose quota tonight. So before I ask you the last question, we sign off. Can you show your favorite symphony you produced this year?
Yeah, probably. I don't know which one's my favorite though. So that's the hardest part. I don't know which one's my favorite. Oh, you want to see produced? Because I have like an old. I'll pull out both. I'll pull out an older male I have that I've actually never showed a picture of. I remember at Reptile Talks, they were asking me like, "What do adults look like?" And I'm like, I could have brought a couple adults with me. I'm not selling all of them. I'm like, holy shit! I'm like, why didn't I do that? So let me get that one dude that I wanted to take the Reptile Talks and I didn't.
All right, guys. Well, Jeff is getting that. Make sure you guys subscribe to our channel. Hit the like button. Thank you for everybody that's tuned in for the 2 hours. We can probably go another hour. Jeff, has a lot of information, and he's been doing this for a long time. But let me get him on solo mode here, so we can
This is just a Super Arctic Symphony conda, and again, this is like actually a pretty typical one. This isn't anything super extreme because they all look really good. They all have like this perfect thick stripe. Now, some of you guys might think about like John Caro's too. He has this Arctic with this nice stripe for me. That one actually is not a symphony. That's like the only animal I'd say that isn't symphony that I ever produced that looks a lot like a symphony was actually that one. But I think that was just like an extreme anomaly. I don't see it being anything like this. But anyway, especially with how the Arctic Conda symphonies look like, and his was an Arctic Conda, but a very different one. But anyway, so this is the one I want to take the reptile talks just to talk to everybody about the extreme striping. And so this is the guy too that bred to the other conda, but you can tell he has the conda belly. And you know, I bred him to the other Super Arctic Symphony conda and didn't get any super condas, and only roughly around 50% condas. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty weird. So
yeah, man, that stripe is very defined, and it is definitely you know, compared to the baby pictures, I can see now the difference in the growth.
Yeah, it looks pretty. It's pretty striking because, you know, some Super Arctic like condas, they can be pretty striped, but getting that consistent is definitely a challenge, and it's not even really a challenge. It's chance, and it's pretty rare. And I've actually I produced a lot of Super Arctic condas. I've never produced like a complete striped one, like maybe like pretty close, but these, again, it's just ultra consistent. It's like every single one.
Yeah, guys, don't drive and you know, try to watch this video. Make sure you guys, if you missed the beginning, watch the replay. You know, it's up, and go ahead. What you got there?
You could just exactly. Don't like crash. You can just rewatch it. Don't become a meme, because that's Reptiles Inc. will make you a meme about you crashing.
Yeah. So those are condas.
These are Moonbeam Symphonies.
Okay.
And I was gonna kind of try like, you know, do two at a time, and they're kind of like not cooperating.
Yeah.
No, they're not like having it. Maybe they will in a second. They're pretty much in full blown explorer. And so they don't look that great because you're seeing mostly their size. You're not seeing this thick stripe. Hold on, I'm gonna get different ones.
Yeah.
So I got these.
Also, guys, by this Friday, all of the episodes are also going to be on Spotify. So the video and the audio is going to be on Spotify, but you can listen to it, you know, if you're driving, and then the audio will be on Apple Podcast. So if you guys are more of the audio people, go check it out. All our previous episodes.
There's two Moonbeam Symphonies. This is the one. This one right here. This is the one I just posted, and you have a picture of. And then here's another one. This is a sister. This one, the striping is a little, you know, like slightly broken by the neck, but still super thick, and it's still completely connecting, but just a couple little breaks. And now I'm not going to drink that water now because there's a snake one in it. But this one has side spotting. Some of them do get very uniform side spotting like that too.
Okay. And what's the belly look on those Moonbeams? Are they just the lavender? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of like your typical lavender top color. Some are a little shattered. I do have one. I have another one with a weird belly. That one weird belly one is not the only one. I actually have a Super Arctic Toffee Conda Symphony, and it's kind of like a low expression symphony. It's actually one where I'd say it's like the symphony's kind of not so much there, but its belly is like very bizarre. It's actually check. Actually, I put it on my stories. If you look at the one, it looks like it's like a toffee belly with this like clear whitish, pale checkering. That's that one. So if you look at my stories, you can see that one.
Okay. And if you can hear us, we have a super chat from Alfred, and RB characteristics. What a quick down and dirty of what would you, how to identify RBE?
Ambiguous and vague. There's the short answer. There's some of the like strong qualities, but the thing is, it's like that reminds me so much of like, you know, watching leopard gecko polygenics and things like I talk about. Things will change over time. I've watched the red striped leopard geckos go from like I remember when they were like perfect and awesome looking, and then actually the more they were line bred, they actually got worse. So you can actually line breed stuff and actually get away from the goal if you're not careful in certain instances. Hognose, though, are a little different. Leopard geckos are a lot more erratic and variable for sure. So, you know, while there's a lot of lessons to take from there, and they actually do all apply to Hognose, they're applied a little differently. But with RB Pastel, it's just an example of something that was, you know, pitched as being dominant. People got it. I know few people over the years that said they had Pastels, 100% for sure, were not RB lineage. So they were just basically saying they were Pastels because they had certain qualities that remind them of Pastels. And so then you have these and the funny thing is all the Pastel stuff all stems from Reptile Breeding Enterprise. They all come from Toffee Belly stuff. And even when I get, let's say, like a toxic and I outcross it into like my Swiss chocolate, they, you know, I get these weird light colored, you know, shark kind of looking babies. And sometimes they're like, they're just like really pretty and they're kind of pastel-y. And I'm like, well, these are the ones where some of that name derives from. And it's like, well, is there remnants of that RB Pastel? There just seems to be some linkage with a polygenic variants to Toffee Belly where you often get these looks. But then there's like ones like I'd say the best ones are any Mai Tai stuff from Dan Eby's original Mai Tai stuff, because what Dan got was some good RB Pastel Toffee Bellies, bred them to his Sables, took those double heads, bred them together, and you just kind of kept breeding them within this gene pool. And so that's very good for, you know, a polygenic to not lose it. And so even though the people are saying it's dominant, meanwhile, everybody else is doing these outcrosses. And, you know, I've heard all kinds of crazy stuff from like some pastels look Arctic, and it's like, you know, they, is it possible some do, but yeah, but you know, it's like they shouldn't be, because that's not what a lot of the original typical ones looked like. But then the ones I have from like Dan's line, which were originally, you know, RB line still from his Mai Tai stuff, those are probably the highest percent of RB Pastel lineage. And what they actually, to me, are more of like a really pretty red phase hognose. And I do get some pretty nice light, soft colors with reddish tones. But the thing is, for me, they're turning more into a red phase because my previous ones are reddish. So I start breeding them within a couple generations. Well, now they're a different type of red phase. And if somebody had ones that were a little more goldish and started line breeding those, they might have ones that are more on the spectrum of more of like a yellow phase type hognose. So that's the thing. It's one of those projects that got a little lost. It wasn't treated like a polygenic. It was outcrossed a bunch. There's ones where they're very vague and they basically have probably a very small percent of actual RB lineage in them. And so it's like, say if you had lemon ghosts out there, they're 12%, 12.5 and 25% LG, just to simplify the percentages. You know, you're not going to get the qualities, anything close to as like we have today. And they're going to take on more of tones of like greenish and like light tans. And so then some people are like, well, lemon ghosts look like this. Well, real lemon ghost is like really yellow. So RB though is like, you know, it's a weird one because like it's one that kind of popped up, and they just pretty much was like, you know, within the Toffee line, these really pretty ones, they're labeling it as that, but they didn't have many generations of selectively line breeding it to increase it. But, you know, as you selectively line breed stuff over generations, it's going to change. You outcross a lot, it's going to keep changing. So that's the thing. The stuff's always going to evolve. Yeah. And those were ones that this got really messy.
You know, and that's right now with the RB, and that's one of the genes, right? One of the traits it is, if it's dominant or if it's poly, we see both, you know, both sides of it. What's it called? Do you think now with genetic testing, do you think we're going to finally be able to put that stuff to rest?
Yeah, try to get your RB Pastel stuff like tested. They're not going to have a good time. They're going to be like, what the fuck? Everything's going to be coming back different. They're not going to be able to find much synonymous. If they do, it's probably going to be like the Toffee Belly mutant in there, if it is there. Mm-hmm. But again, these gene testing stuff, it's not going to work well on like Pauly's. You know, I explained earlier why. I mean, you could use it for certain things, but yeah, an RB Pastel. Well, tell me what an RB Pastel is. Outcross it, raise those up, keep outcrossing it, and tell me which is our RB Pastel with definitiveness. And then outcross them enough and get genetic testing where they find the commonality of one mutant allele. It's not going to happen. I'll bet my life on it. Somebody's like, that's the bet. I'm not going to go into details. That's the bet.
Jeff is going to bet Moonbeam Symphony on it.
Yeah, I'll do that. So yeah, the thing is, it's fun stuff though.
Yeah. That's what a super Arctic symphony.
Yes, this is our Moonbeam Symphony. Actually,
Okay.
I hit the funny thing is some of these were head to heads, and I still ended up I ended up with more Moonbeam Symphonies. I did super Arctic condas symphonies. So again, very good odds. I don't know what the hell's going on. Normally I'm not this lucky. This year has been like pretty dang good. Or this is a super Arctic condas symphony. See, the camera's kind of making it darker.
Yeah. Has it shed already?
No, these haven't had their growth sheds yet.
Yeah.
Their second shed, their kind of like official shed. They have not had that. These guys are pretty young. These guys just hatched out like a few weeks ago.
Okay. Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see after that first growth shed.
And here's another Moonbeam Symphony. So these are like all my favorites. I'm like, yeah, this one's outstanding too. It's like, they look like the one like that picture, that really nice one you brought up. They all look like that. Some are a little different, a little narrower. A couple of them have like a little bit of shattering, but they all look like this, this nice, perfect stripe. And it connects them to the head too, which is really cool.
Yeah, those are really cool, man. I think that's, like I said earlier, that was my favorite picture of the Moonbeam.
Yeah, the Moonbeam Symphonies, and that's what I have a lot of. I wouldn't say a lot, but I have there's 4 in this clutch. I think I have 3 or 4 in another clutch. I think I have 1 over there. So I have 9 Moonbeam Symphonies this year. Maybe I have another one. I think I have 1 small clutch about to hatch, and I still have another pairing I have to do too.
We went over a little bit over 2 hours, but thanks for showing those, those animals here. Thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing your new trait and stuff like that. My last question, since we're on genetics and stuff like that, if you had to choose one gene in the hognose to get rid of, which would it be?
Oh, to get rid of it. So it's got to be a mutant, huh?
Yeah, it's got to be a mutant.
Oh, shit. Yeah, it could be I don't know, it's a very good question.
To keep all the others that we have, if you had to choose one.
Well, it's very complex of my answer, because it could be possibly hypo, because I don't really see a hypo's fine trait. It's linked to caramel, but I don't think it's actually necessary. It may not be necessary to actually make frost, and I'll talk more about that later. But anyway, so without that, if you don't really need it there, it's basically, toffee belly's extremely similar but more colorful. But oh man, it's a big one. That's going to be one for a video I was going to make. It might be skull face.
Oof.
Yeah, and I invested a lot into skull face. It might be here's the thing. That's the thing. It's not as you just open up another half-hour conversation with this question.
But you know what?
Could be an hour.
I agree with that answer. I don't see skull face enough of an impact, at least for myself, to get into it and to pay what it's worth. What it's being sold for.
No, that's not it. It actually has pretty cool impact. It does a lot more than people think, especially because when I looked at them, I was like, if you actually normal skull face next to a normal, their bodies look very different. Huge difference. I'd actually say it's kind of subtle, but it's strong enough where I'm like, oh, this is actually, it's going to do a lot of crazy stuff. In certain combos, I already know this is going to be a sick combo. They have some neurological issues. So that's why I'd always say pink pastel is a pick, because pink pastels have neurological issues. Now, I will say skull face isn't as bad as a spider ball python. It's not as bad as an enigma leopard gecko. Those are really bad ones. The skull face though is kind of in this neighborhood of it's right on the verge. I'm wondering if it should even be bred. That's the problem there, because I'm getting ones that are now they're all able to live quality lives, but some of them are a little quirky and they turn a bit. And I have some that they don't have trouble eating or drinking. but should we be reproducing an animal that has some dysfunctions? But people do it with dogs and pretty much everything else. I don't want to get into the whole eugenics topics and stuff but if there's something that is going to produce knowingly an issue, should it be produced? Now the issue is somewhat minimal, but it's kind of like there. So it could be like a $75,000 loss, which I'm willing to take. It's not so much. It's really nothing about the money. This trait is the most heartbreaking thing is skull face. I can actually see doing a lot of really cool stuff. I'd actually say it's one of the most important traits if it didn't have this issue, especially with what I see what can be done with it. But yeah, it might have to be skull face.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is very bad.
Yeah. And I know we've had a skull face, conversation, and it's like, you've invested pretty heavily into skull face stuff too, So
yeah, I don't really have much respect for money when it comes to hognose. Hognose is domineering, so I don't really. It's the skull face though. It's like the problem is there's just so I even have some like whitish pied markings on their face. They have black noses and like pink tongues and super arctics, and there's some really weird stuff. I have some super arctics that have like all white bellies from it. They're friggin' crazy looking. And I know it's going to have a few impacts on some really other cool traits. And I'm already in the middle of those projects. I already have the animals gravid and stuff. So we'll see. But yeah, it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a really tough one to know what to do in this situation. So I'm definitely going to I brought it up in the one live. So I don't know. It's kind of a decision I really don't want to make on my own. I think I already know what the decision is, but I want to see what other people think.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I think that could be a whole nother, 2-hour topic on.
Could be. Yeah, I got
things,
another one
like
too. I don't give a shit. The guy that sold them, we all knew who he is. He lied to me about it because I got him. I was like, these have neurological issues. No, they don't. They do. It's quite obvious. The only way they don't is if you lie. So I could say they don't have neurological issues. It's called lying.
Yeah. And you know what? and talking about that, and maybe that's why we haven't seen, like you said, the impacts you're seeing with the stuff you're breeding and the other, combos, because I haven't seen any really from the originator on things that really have blown me away. Is like, okay, I want skull face in my collection,
Yeah, he has the super conda frosted skull face that's kind of pretty much naked. I can show you some cool ones. I don't know, this podcast, I don't want to keep going though.
We're gonna cut it here tonight.
All right, yeah, that's fine.
But we're gonna come back and revisit some of that stuff. And I'm gonna bring this last super chat up because he did bring it. He wanted you to show the lemon ghost he wants to buy.
It's another joke. It's another joke. He hasn't even picked the snake. We don't even know what it is.
All right, so send him a video in the Discord of the lemon ghost.
He did that on purpose. That's what. So the if you're not in the Discord, I think it's I don't know. If you like memes, there's some pretty funny stuff going on there. At least
I can't keep up with it. I can't keep up. There's a lot going on in there. But here to close off, John, he caught it going. You drank the snake water.
I did drink it. Son of a bitch. Damn, I did drink that. All right, that's fine.
All right, a little bit of panicure will be all right.
Yeah, I'll be all right. Damn, I forgot about that. That's pretty funny. Thanks, John. Yeah, I'm not going to drink any more now. Yeah, because I think I turned it too. I drank it right where she touched. Great.
That's all right. All right, Jeff, everybody that watched tonight, thanks for your time. And we'll see you guys on the next one. We'll talk more. And if you guys want the symphony, message Jeff. He's got some really cool stuff. And we'll see you guys in Dallas. And then we got a show, another podcast coming up the weekend after Dallas. So good night, everybody. And like I said, we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.